I unfortunately have a plethora of these kinds of stories. I've encountered a ton of creeps as a teen, and this is about one of them. Back in high school, I lived pretty close to my school building. It was maybe a 15 to 20 minute walk, at the most. In my senior year, I had 2 free periods at the end of my day instead of class. I took extra courses in night school and summer school the year before, so I usually start walking home around 1:30 or so. The area I used to live in was extremely quiet, to the point where, depending on certain weather or time of day, it was unnerving to walk the streets. It was suburbia, but the kind where people barely came out of their houses. It was a super rainy day, the sky was murky, and no one was outside, not even for a walk, despite it being daylight. I had my headphones in, listening to music on the way home. I was nearing a small library around the corner from my house, when out of the corner of my eye I noticed this large van with tinted windows. No one was parked near the library because it was closed that day. Odd, I thought, that someone was choosing to park there now. I continued walking until I heard a muffled sound. Curious, I took one of my earbuds out and looked up to my right. The front seat of the van had rolled down their window, and I could see the face of a middle-aged man with a mustache. I was confused, wondering, was he talking to me? And he drove slowly alongside me, presumably repeating what I didn't hear earlier. "Are you alone?" An alarm immediately went off in my head. There was no one in sight, and I was a small teenager who didn't know what to do. I panicked, put my earbud back in, and as I turned around promptly to walk the other way, he began to glare intensely at me and turned his van around to follow me. My music was paused, and I was pretending I didn't hear him. I had 2 choices: the elementary school coming up ahead, or back where I came from. The back of the elementary school was hard to reach quickly, and I was scared that I'd corner myself in. I kept walking quickly, not looking at the van following me. I was on the way back to my high school. Once I got closer, the van sped away quickly. It was getting towards the end of the day there, and people were starting to leave. Almost hyperventilating, I got to the office to tell the secretary everything that just happened. I got my mom to pick me up, and as we drove home, I described the van to her. We reported it to the police, and the next day, I was picked up early from school. The smart woman she is decided to drive by the library that day, around the time I usually walked home. It was quiet out, as usual. Then, she saw the van with tinted windows, as I described it to her. It was parked, waiting for someone. Waiting for me. We gave the license plate to the police, and explained our concerns. When we checked back in on them, they told us that they found the owner of the van. He was renting the basement of a house nearby the library. He said he was waiting there to pick up his kids. The elementary school wouldn't have been let out until nearly 4 p.m., so why was he hanging out there around 1 p.m.? It was clearly a lie, but the police said that they'll keep an eye on him, and they weren't in their rights to do anything else. Frustratingly, the last update we got was that he moved shortly after, with no consequences. So I just turned 18 a few weeks ago, and due to the pandemic and all, I wouldn't, or rather couldn't, throw a big party. I just had 2 of my closest friends over. Let's call them Melissa and Carla. They both were 18 as well. We planned on having a fun evening the night before I turned 18, and just made some fancy dinner and have some fun, and that's what we did. We didn't have any alcohol. So when 12 o'clock rolled around, we celebrated some, and I unwrapped their gifts, one of which was one of those realistic looking seal plushies, which was kind of a joke because I went through a phase when I found a fat seal incredibly adorable and got Instagram ads for those things all the time. Anyway, we were really hyped, and we decided to go walk with our music box and the plushie at about 1 in the morning. Just for context, we live in a relatively small, rural town, but it's next to a big lake, so there's a bunch of tourists in the summer, and we also have multiple clinics around, one for eating disorders, and the other one, a rehab center. It's usually really safe and quiet, especially at night. So we dance and sing along loudly on the empty streets, just having fun with it. We pass a few people, but they seem normal and nice, but generally it's really empty and deserted on the streets. As we approach this big empty parking lot, which we needed to pass by in order to get back home, I noticed a guy in a dark hooded pullover coming from the parking lot across the street to the side that we were walking on. We turned the music down as he passed, and he greeted us briefly in passing, and we greeted him back. He looked to be in his mid-30s, but seemed totally non-threatening and normal to us at that point. We thought nothing more of it as we walked and turned the music back up. Now, in order to get home, we had to go through some small patch of woods where there was no street lights or houses nearby. As we started approaching the area, a few minutes after we met the man, we suddenly started hearing talking behind us. We realized that someone was walking about 10 meters behind us. At first, we thought he was just talking to someone on the phone, but it was pretty dark and we couldn't see if that was the case. When we passed one of the last streetlights before the patch of woods, we realized it was the same guy that had walked past us a few minutes before, who was walking in the opposite direction as us, and he would have had to turn around after he passed us in order to be right behind us. That was when we really started to get creeped out. We also realized that he wasn't on the phone, but because of the loud music we had on, we couldn't make out what he was saying. So in that moment, I, for some reason, figured it was a good idea to say, "I always have a knife with me," in a loud, speaking tone to my friends. They later told me that they actually bought it, but in reality, we had nothing with us in the case that we would need to defend ourselves. I kind of figured that maybe it would scare the guy off or something, but it sadly didn't. So there was one last house, which was actually an inn, that we would have to pass before we had to go through the patch of woods. I said to my friends that maybe he was staying there, but we all agreed that if he kept following us after that point, it couldn't be a coincidence, and he was indeed following us. In hindsight, we should have just turned around at that point and stayed in the well-lit, populated area, but I guess we weren't thinking that clear. So we passed the inn, and he was still following us. One of us turned our phone flashlight on as there were no more street lights and it was pitch black where we were going. We kept turning around and checking if he was still behind us, each time increasing our walking speed until we were nearly running, but he kept getting closer and closer. My heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. I was scared for my life. I kept thinking that he could have some kind of weapon on him or something. Then one of my friends, Melissa, stopped and turned around. Carla and me stood a few meters behind her. Immediately the guy approached her, asking her if we had any alcohol or cigarettes. She answered in a totally sober tone that we in fact didn't have anything with us. He took a few steps towards her, asking again if we really didn't have anything with us that we could give him. Melissa answered more firmly this time that we didn't have anything. This guy really seemed desperate. At this point, Melissa said that she was ready to kick him in the balls if he took one step closer to her. She actually does kickboxing and knows how to defend herself, but still, he was a grown man and probably had more power than an 18-year-old girl. Carla and me were just frozen and didn't know what to do. I just kept standing there, saying nothing. He asked Melissa if we lived nearby or if we were here on vacation, to which she answered that we live in the area, as she figured it's better that he thinks we know the area and the people well and wouldn't get any ideas. Luckily for us, after a few more times reassuring him that we also didn't have anything for him at my home, I think the guy realized that he was getting nowhere with us and decided to just turn around and walk back the way he came from, leaving us half scared to death as we sped walk back to my house, glancing behind us every few seconds to check if he had decided to follow us home after all, which luckily he didn't. We arrived safely at my home, still scared, and I double checked that I locked the doors behind us. I couldn't really fall asleep that night, always thinking that I heard something outside. So creepy man who decided to follow 3 18-year-old girls into the dark woods in the middle of the night to ask them for alcohol and cigarettes. What the heck were you thinking? Second post here. I had forgotten about this particular encounter until this morning. I was about 14 and in middle school when this happened. My mom picked me up from a sleepover and we went to our local Dollar General to pick up a few things. While inside, a man entered the store, maybe in his late 20s to early 30s. He seemed to be aimlessly walking around. People do that all the time in the store, so I didn't think anything of it and wasn't paying much attention. As a teenage girl that I was probably on my phone or something. Inside the store, the aisles are pretty close together, so seeing into the next one or listening to things even 2 or 3 aisles away was pretty easy. While as my mom and I were walking down the aisle, I occasionally saw this guy walking towards or around us, giving us glances but never actually coming near us, and I would hear him slowly shuffling behind us or the next aisle over. It is a small store with limited amount of space, so once again, I didn't really give it a second thought. Then, it was like every time we went to turn the corner or change aisles, he was darting to another aisle as if he didn't want us to see that he was there. I'd get a feeling that I was being watched, so I turned around and see him doing the same thing. Sometimes I was able to see him out of the corner of my eye, just peeking around the corner or at the end of the aisle, just watching. It was the creepiest thing ever at 14 years old. I remember my mom telling me to grab something from the other end of the store, and I refused to do it in fear of running into this guy without an adult present. As we were checking out, I saw him make a beeline for the exit. He was gone from the parking lot when we went to leave as well. I never said anything to my mom about it, as nothing actually happened, and there's really nothing that could be done. Well, sometime later, maybe a month or so, my mom gets a call from the sheriff's department, and they say to her that I need to come down immediately, because I may have been a witness to a crime. Naturally, I panicked, as any teenager would do, because at that point, I had forgotten about the previous incident. The officer rolled the clip from the Dollar General with us on the footage, as well as the dude. It confirmed my fears that day, and showed him literally following us around the store the whole time we were in there. And as soon as I turned around, he tried to hide. Later in the video, he was actually touching himself as he was watching me and my mom. I was disgusted. Turns out, right around the same time, he was arrested for exposing himself to an 8-year-old girl in the same store. I was completely freaked out and didn't want to think about what could have happened if I wandered off alone in that store that day. I was on my way home from work one day. The time was around 9 p.m., so I was rushing. Because of the time, there were only a few people around. As I was getting close to home, I had to pass by a gas station. I got close and looked up. I spotted a dark green van parked by the road. I started having stupid thoughts about how if someone opened the van door and dragged me in, no one would see me. I brushed off the weird thought and passed by the van without anything happening. I was a block away from my house now and saw the headlights from behind me, but they never passed me. I was paying close attention and waited for the car. All of a sudden, a loud car honk rang through the air. I turned around to see the van stopping right beside me on the road. The car that honked was behind the van, a frustrated driver wondering why the van was going so slow. As I looked up to see the driver of the van violently pulled away and sped down the road. I was scared. As this happened, my first instinct was to memorize the license plate number. My house was at the end of the block, and I was sure I saw the van pass the block and went off. I was almost at my door when for some reason I turned around because I felt like I was being watched. That's when I spotted the van across the road. It couldn't have been the same van, I thought. I couldn't see the color clearly as there weren't any streetlights across from my house. The van was parked as if it was going towards the gas station. That's when my eyes adjusted and I could just make out the license plate. It was the same van. I was shocked and looked up to see the driver. There were 2 men sitting in the front. There was a light on inside the van that was illuminating their faces. They looked angry. They were both looking right at me. It seemed like they were talking about something while still keeping their eyes on me. I had enough at this point and unlocked my door and ran in, slamming it and locking it. I ran in looking and calling for my mom. No one responded, so I was worried that the men would come in and kidnap me. I slowly crept to the window and looked out and found that the van was no longer there. This happened a few months ago, and I've been careful whenever I see a van near me. This happened to me when I was 15. I was in the city center by myself after finishing school and checking libraries and the video game stores. When I got bored, I went to the bus stop, which was about 10 minutes away from the shopping zone. At one point, I had to cross a big street, and while I was waiting for the stoplight to change, I felt an unknown man really near me. He was maybe around 30, short, with his face all red. He had balding blonde hair, and his clothes were dirty. I felt his breath on me, but I was just ignoring it, thinking that he was just waiting to cross, like everyone else. He waited alongside me for a few minutes without saying a thing, and again I just ignored it. When I was near the bus stop, he started talking to me. "Hi, what's your name?" A bit of small talk, and I answered him. I told him I was going home, and something sparked his eyes. He told me that he was coming with me. I said that my parents would be waiting for me, so he told me, "Oh, I'm sure they won't mind me sleeping with you tonight." I freaked out on the inside. That's when I realized he would follow me everywhere no matter what I said. I stopped answering him, and he asked me for my phone number and everything. Then the bus came. He got up and followed me. When I was about to pay for my ticket, I just thought to myself, no way, did a U-turn and started running away, leaving him at the bus. He didn't follow me. I went to the previous bus stop to take the next bus, waited for it in a hyperventilated state, but luckily I didn't see him again. I was driving around town late today, around 3 a.m., with a friend of mine, just cruising and talking about random stories. I noticed a car behind me, following me closely and aggressively. It was weird because I was driving calm and slow, without bothering anyone. I immediately noticed and figured something was wrong, so I took a right at the light. I noticed the same car followed me. I kinda made an abrupt but stupid decision and took the next right, which ended up being a dead end. This didn't stop the car from following me, which I thought it would. At this point, I was a bit confused and worried as to why someone would follow us this late at night. I went to the end of the dead end and quickly made a broken U-turn as the other car did the same. However, the car stopped for a second and basically had us pinned in. At this point, I got a glimpse of an old lady looking and smiling weirdly at us. I was confused as to what she wanted from us. She rolled down her window, and I did as well. She's laughing and smiling weirdly, making me very uncomfortable. She states how she's putting us both on the FBI extortion list, and how we'll both amount to nothing before she sped off. I didn't say a word as I was confused and shocked as to what was going on. I still don't know what the whole ordeal was or who this old lady was. I don't even live near this area, and all I was doing was having a calm drive at 3 a.m. with a friend to clear our thoughts. It all happened so fast and unexpected, and it was just too weird to grasp. The car hadn't followed us for long, I'd say roughly 5 minutes, give or take. I make sure to watch my rearview mirror at all times, so I always notice when something odd or someone is following too closely. It was weird to say the least, but also confusing. This is my first post, and something happened a week ago. My blood still runs cold when I think about it. Keep in mind, this isn't like any of the really scary stories on here, but it scared me, and was definitely out of the ordinary. My brother wanted to get a drink from a place both of us loved to go. It was going to close soon, and he had work to do, so I went by myself. It wasn't very late, but it was already dark, and my parents had drummed into me since birth about the dangers of walking alone at night. I was kind of nervous that day, and even thought I've done it many times before, so I went and got both drinks, and for some reason, I didn't get a bag. I was walking along with both hands full. Bad idea. As I'm walking towards the street where my house was, I suddenly become aware of two men very close to me. One was in front of me, wearing a maroon pullover, and the other one was behind me, wearing a gray zipped up hoodie with the hood pulled up. I only turned around for a flash of a second, so I couldn't describe his face to you. I was weirded out because I was walking between them and was beginning to feel uncomfortable, like they were trying to herd me. Just as I was telling myself that I was clearly overreacting, I came across a garage that was down an alleyway, and a black Subaru was coming out. I had time to cross before they reached me. The person inside clearly wasn't counting on me doing that, so they swung around and parallel parked next to me, at most 2 feet away. So now, I was between the three men and a wall. When I saw the door open, I thought that was the end for me. I bolted and didn't stop running until I reached my house. So yeah, black Subaru driver, gray hoodie, and maroon pullover guy. Let's not meet. I live in a safe neighborhood in the Bay Area. We are lucky to have numerous outdoor parks nearby, which have been a saving grace since COVID started. Since gyms are closed, I've taken to running outside, and oftentimes I'll be running in the early evening. It's cooler, there are fewer people, and less crowds. Makes it a lot easier to run, especially in COVID times. I like decompressing after a stressful workday. As the days have been getting shorter, even though I try to start my runs when it's still light out, sometimes it does mean that it's dark during the latter half of my run. One day when I didn't have much daylight, I was sticking to running loops in the park closest to my home, which is well lit. I ran there all the time and have never felt unsafe until one night, perhaps a month or two ago. On that night, I was running my usual circular route in the long, skinny park that perhaps is a mile long. It had just gotten dark when an intimidating looking man dressed in all black, baggy clothing appeared from the grassy wooded area. He approached me while I was running on the sidewalk, the loops around the park, and started jogging next to me while calling out to me. I had my headphones in and I couldn't make out exactly what he was saying, but it was catcalling of some sort. Unnerved, I turned my music up and tuned him out and run faster, thinking he would leave me alone. I was wrong. He began running faster, pretty much in sync with me and parallel to me on the grassy part of the panhandle, so a smaller circumference of the loop I was running. I had just turned the corner of the end of the panhandle loop, so there was nowhere I could go to escape, and I began to panic because there weren't others around. And this section of the panhandle I was in was not particularly well lit. After rounding the end of the loop, still panicked, with this man still chasing me, I saw an older white man with AirPods in. He was walking up ahead on the path. I neared him. I slowed my run to a walking pace with him, but just a little bit behind him, so he did not know I was there. But I had effectively positioned him between the man and myself. Seeing this, the man chasing me also slowed down, but at this point he had already ran a bit ahead and couldn't slow down or come closer to me without raising the suspicion of the oblivious Samaritan I was using as a human shield. He began jogging ahead on the path in front of us, continuously looking back at me, only somewhat deterred. I kept walking in the pace with the Samaritan, all thoughts of continuing my run over. Focus on trying to figure out how I was going to get back home safely. We walked like this for perhaps a couple minutes until my cross-street exit approached. The man had jogged ahead, further now, but kept looking back at me as if he was waiting for the oblivious Samaritan to go wherever he was headed, presumably assuming that I would have to continue my run on the path towards him. At my cross-street intersection, the Samaritan just happened to turn left, which was the opposite direction where I needed to go. so I took it as my cue to peel right and sprint home as fast as I could, praying that there was enough distance between me and the harasser to lose him. I don't think I've ever ran so fast in my life. I made it home safely and didn't see him on my block when I finally got to my apartment, so at least he doesn't know where I live if he did in fact continue trying to follow me. I want to pretend like nothing bad would have happened had the oblivious Samaritan not been there, but I really got bad gut vibes and was just so sketched out by this guy. How bold and persistent can someone be to chase a solo female that is running in a city park at night for a fair amount of time, no less? I can't imagine he just wanted to chit chat. If he did, he needs to seriously reconsider his tactics. I went to a small school. There were 8 girls in my class. It was a bit chilly out, so none of them wanted to go hang out after school, which was the usual plan on Fridays, as there was an ice cream shop about 15-minute walk from our school. However, my best friend stepped up and we agreed to go alone. There was no problems at first. The town is small, friendly, clean, and our parents gave us permission to go, even though it was just the 2 of us. It wasn't long until we noticed a white van trailing behind us. I distinctly remembered being told to avoid white vans at a young age, so I grew up terribly afraid of them. My friend and I laughed because we noticed it at the exact same moment, and I told her I was afraid of them. We picked up our pace, but so did the van. We didn't want to seem like scaredy cats, so we stopped, but so did the van. We began, along with the van, to inch forward, but eventually the van picked up speed and came even closer to us. It was terrifying. I grabbed my friend's wrist and with a painful smile told her to go along with me. I held her hand and walked up to the front door of the nearest house, fiddled with my purse for a non-existent key as we carried on an equally non-existent conversation. The van stopped right in front of us, and a scuffy man driving it rolled down his window and stared at us. Just then, my friend's mom drove up and asked if we wanted a ride. The van immediately sped off. We didn't tell my mom what happened right away. We took it lightheartedly, but as someone who grew up afraid of kidnappings, it was terrifying. When I was 15 years old, my friend and I, both female, used to walk from school to her house, about a 30-minute walk, on Fridays afternoons to start our weekends. We usually stopped at the sub shop in town for early dinner to eat while we played video games and hung out. After we got our sandwiches, we walked outside and continued to our house, about 15 more minutes. Outside of the sub shop, there's a man sitting on a bench outside the shop who I didn't see when we walked in. He was really tall and muscular, around 6'5", pale and bald, probably in his early to mid-30s, and very intimidating wearing his bright orange sweatshirt. The hairs on the back of my neck instantly stood up as soon as I saw him. I noticed right away that after we passed him, he got up from the bench and started walking behind us. Not so weird, maybe just going his way. But what made me instantly realize that this dude wasn't right was that he was holding his phone to his ear, but not talking at all. This was just before smartphones became a thing, so it wasn't like he was just swiping along on Tinder or checking Instagram. In this time, if you had a flip phone out and clearly weren't talking to someone, that was weird because that was the only thing you did with those cell phones. We actually spoke to people. So weird now, right? He did this for so long that he couldn't have been listening to his voicemail. I had a gut feeling that something was wrong, so I stopped walking and pretended to fumble around with something in my purse, so the man ended up in front of us and no longer following behind us. I tell my friend why I pretended and stopped walking, and she kind of blew me off, as if I was being paranoid. We start walking again, and there's a gas station up ahead. You can either walk across the gas station to the main road, or go down a side road around the gas station that will also eventually lead you to the main road. Just a longer route. My friend and I cut through the gas station, and the man went around and ended up being behind us again. He was still holding his phone to his ear, but not speaking. At this point, I'm eternally freaked out. I know he's following us, but I'm trying to play it cool and come up with a plan. While my friend still doesn't take me seriously. We get to a turn that's a shortcut to my friend's house. Now, this road is pretty remote. Cars usually don't drive down there often, and there isn't a house for quite some time. But it was the fastest way to get to my friend's house. Just past the road was a large shopping center. I told my friend that if we started walking down this remote road and the man follows, that he's 100% following us because no one goes down this road, really ever, and that I would just book it to the closest store in the shopping center. I looked behind me to check where the man is, and he somehow got significantly closer to us, and of course, started walking down the road. We made eye contact, and he gave me the creepiest grin. I instantly started running with my friend following me, and we ran into a Rite Aid, while the guy continued to follow, but he doesn't go in the store. We get into the store, and the cashier takes notice that we are freaked out and asks what's wrong, so we tell her. She asks if we need the police, but we decline, and I just call my dad to pick us up and drop us off at my friend's house. My dad arrives about 10 minutes later with a cashier clerk keeping an eye on us, and the man was nowhere to be found. My dad wanted to find the guy, but my dad was older in his 60s, and this man was in his 30s and huge, so he definitely would have beaten my dad up, or worse. So I just begged for him to get in the car and get away from here. I was only 15 in hindsight, and we should have reported it to the cops. Here's the creepiest part of the story. As we were getting in the car, I see the man pop out from the parking lot from behind a parked car and started walking the other way. This guy was definitely waiting for us to come out of the store, follow us, and do God knows what. I didn't say anything because I didn't want my dad to try to fight him and have something bad happen, but it just confirmed that this creep was following us and planning on doing some harm. Thankfully, my friend and I were fine and we never saw the guy again, but my friend told her friend about the incident, and she said that she knew the guy because he lives near her and that he's definitely a creep who has had multiple complaints against him. I haven't heard of or seen him since, and I hope he never did anything to harm anyone. I still think about the story 12 years later, and there's a reason I'm so aware of my surroundings at all times, especially when I'm walking alone. To start off with some background, I'm a female, and at the time this happened, I was 12 years old. I lived in a quiet suburb in South Carolina at the time, and used to spend hours just walking my dog around the neighborhood because there wasn't much else to do. At the time, we had a 70-pound basset hound named Rufus, which kind of looked like a sawed-off St. Bernard. So I was walking him late in the afternoon in the fall, and it started to get dark. I was on the other end of the neighborhood from my house when I first saw a beat up, rusty red pickup truck just kind of driving around. I didn't think a whole lot about it because it's the South, so pickup trucks are all over the place around here. I saw the truck cross the street I was gonna pass and then come back out the other end, further down, and go back the way I came from. To give you an idea of the neighborhood, it wasn't set up like regular blocks. More like a main road and a bunch of roads that looped around and came back to the main road. At first I figured this guy was lost or something, and still didn't think much of it. But as I was getting closer to my house and it was getting darker, I saw the truck again. Another thing about my neighborhood was, even though there were a lot of houses, everybody pretty much kept to themselves in their house for the most part. So there wasn't really anyone outside this time of night, even though it was still fairly early. So I come out of the neighborhood onto the main road to my house, and the truck is there again, this time just parked on the side of the road, facing the road I came out from. I turned onto the road to my house, and it started moving, driving slowly behind me, with the lights out. Now, if you know anything about a basset hound, they're not the most threatening kind of dogs. They're short and stubby, with big ears and a goofy face, so even if Rufus was a big dog, he wasn't exactly the greatest guard dog. They also didn't walk very fast, and tend to trip over their ears when they run. So I was stuck with him setting a pace, and with him weighing as much as I did, It's not like I could reach down and pick him up or try to run or anything. So here I am, walking down the dark road in the quiet neighborhood with my slow-ass dog and this creepy truck behind me. I knew I couldn't really run from it, and I doubted that anyone would hear me if I tried to scream or something if they came after me, so I finally came up with a plan, even if it was probably a stupid one. When I got to one of the handful of streetlights on the street, I stopped and turned around and just stared the truck down. The truck stopped moving and just kind of sat there about 30 feet away from me, like it was trying to look like it parked or something. I stood there and stared at the truck for what felt like forever, but it was probably around 2 or 3 minutes. After a while, the truck started moving again, turned on its lights, and turned off down another road. I booked it to someone's backyard and took the backyards the rest of the way home. I never told my mom about this creepy truck because I knew she would probably freak out and wouldn't let me take the dogs out alone anymore. This happened a few days ago. It was about 10 p.m. and it was trash night. I had a lot of homework, so I didn't end up taking the trash out earlier. My mom came in and told me to take the trash down to the side of the road, where we always do. For context, we have a church behind our house, and it has a parking lot and a shed right behind our garage. We set our trash cans up against the garage, close to the parking lot. Anyways, I went outside to grab the cans and noticed a dingy, busted up looking van with 2 doors in the back. I've seen this van before, and for around a month, it was always parked at the other end of the parking lot. It was parked right beside the shed, big back doors facing me. This was not a church van. It was very dirty and rusted, nor did it have any logo. I was standing near my garage, not quite at the trash cans yet, and I had a really bad gut feeling. Something just didn't feel right. I looked closer at the van and noticed the silhouette of a person's head in the driver's seat. I couldn't identify this man or woman because it was dark. This is when my fight or flight senses kicked in. I ran inside because I didn't feel safe and told my mom about it. She said I was overreacting, which was probably true, but told me I could just take the cans down before I left for school. The next morning rolled around, and it was 7 a.m. I went to grab the trash cans, and the van was gone, which in a way gave me relief that I didn't go near it the night before. I don't know, maybe I'm overreacting, but it's just an unsettling encounter. So I had biked about 10 minutes to take the bus to work during the week. I had spent the weekend with my in-laws, so I didn't have my bike with me last Monday, and I had to walk after the bus got me to the closest stop. It was a 20-minute walk. Basically, it's all residential and numbered by streets. So I get off on, say, 50th Street and walk to 40th. When I first started walking, there's a black car that was on the other side of the road, driving slowly. It pulled off to the right next to somebody's driveway. I didn't think much and just kept walking. When I got to the next street though, the car is doing it again. I walked faster and trying to watch for it. It followed me most of the way there, finally turning off a side road. I didn't recognize the person in the car, which was an older male, but now I'm freaking out. I already have agoraphobia, and when I bike in the mornings, it's dark out there. Can't help but feeling that I'm being followed. Trafficking is a known thing here, and I'm female. Someone please tell me what I should do. I need to get to work, but biking and walking is the only way I can afford it right now, and I'm scared of next Monday. Update. I'm amazed by all the comments and support from y'all. Thank you. I do have pepper spray and a taser, as well as an alarm I carry around my neck that yells really loud. After some suggestions, I downloaded the Noonlight app, and that's given me the peace of mind that I needed. We have a neighborhood watch on the same street that I'm on, and I've let them, as well as the local police, know. For now, everything is okay, and I'll keep staying alert. It's sad that we have to be so aware of our surroundings, and even worry about things like this. This happened to me about a year ago. I've only ever shared this story with a couple of people. However, I thought it couldn't hurt to share it here. Big disclaimer before going forward. Don't worry, I realize I'm a huge idiot in this situation, and my choices could have put me in danger. However, I made it out alive and unharmed, and that's all that really matters, even if I was too panicked to think properly and acted like a complete idiot. Also, before I forget to mention, I'm a 21-year-old female. So it was around June 2019. I was doing a closing shift at the McDonald's I worked at in town. I live in England, originally from Scotland. We close up at 2 a.m. on weekdays and 3 a.m. on weekends. It had been a Saturday night shift, so I was finished and out the building by 3:15 roughly. When this happened, I was living about 10 to 15 minutes walk from my work in a flat that was mostly taken up by students. I didn't have money to spare to consistently get taxis, and I had been walking home at night for the past year with no incidents, so of course, I didn't think anything differently of doing it again. The majority of my walk was fine, and I was about 4 minutes away from my flat when I noticed a guy just standing near the corner that I had to turn to get home. I am wary when I see people, but usually they're drunk, or mind their own, or just ask for directions. Or it's a homeless person, as there's quite a lot in the city I live in. But at this time at night, they usually keep to themselves. This guy was dressed nice, but casual, looked around mid-20s, well-groomed, tan skin, and a really strong smelling aftershave. He was obviously a regular at a gym too, because he had a muscular figure, and he didn't seem to be drunk by the look of things, but who knows. I tried to keep my distance, but he approached me and started making really casual conversation, asking me what my name was, complimenting my accent, and asking where I was from. I stupidly engaged with him, but gave him a fake name and made it clear I wasn't up for a chat. I should have been firm with my words, but I'm way too introverted and shy to speak up. Even my boyfriend complains that I talk too quietly sometimes, and I struggle to be direct with people. Throughout the whole conversation, he was giving me an unsettling smile and would try to touch my arm or play with my hair, which I made it as clear as I possibly could that I did not approve of. Not that he was listening. He would just say something along the lines of, "But you're just so pretty." Not flattering at all when it's a man who won't take no for an answer. Anyways, this guy asked me for a hug, and even though I refused him as politely as possible, he did it anyways. I froze up for a couple seconds before I moved away, which thankfully he let me do. He was being extremely creepy at this point, and tried feeling over my sides as he gave me a hug, which gave me even more alarm bells ringing in my head. I told him I had to leave, and as I was walking away, I heard, "I'll walk you home. Where do you live?" Unfortunately, I had nowhere else to go but home. Nobody else was around, and it was too early in the morning. My roommate was also back at his own house, as he went back home every weekend. I had a hold of my keys in my pocket and just hoped once I got to the building I could find a way in without this guy being able to invite himself in. I refused his walk home, but he followed me anyways, walking about 8 to 10 feet away from me as I was speeding up at this point, but caught up as I crossed the road. I don't know why I decided to go the long way to get to my building, which was an extra 2 minutes or so not that long. As I was approaching the flat, I felt a horrible sinking feeling in my chest. The door to the building closes really slow at first, before slamming shut, so I knew if I walked in, he could potentially follow me inside, and that puts me at an even greater risk. By this point, he was begging me to let him inside. He said he was extremely thirsty and wanted some water, but I told him that my roommate was sleeping, a subtle way to deter him by showing that I wasn't alone. But that didn't seem to faze him. He was trying to be touchy and just kept pleading with me to let him inside. But I kept my ground and said no as best as possible. As he was talking to me, I managed to use the fob on the door to open it, just enough to carefully slide through. However, he was right by the door and I didn't want to make him upset, so I apologized and told him no once again. Luckily, he had moved away from the door as someone wanted to get into the building. The guy asked if everything was okay when he saw me, but I stupidly said everything was fine. That did give me a chance to move away from the door and let it close once the guy walked through. I didn't even look back to the guy as I ran upstairs to my flat as fast as I could. I didn't get any sleep that night, and from that moment on, I made sure I always had money aside for a taxi. I think I walked home once more between June and October before I moved. Really scary stuff, and I'm glad I never saw him again after that. I got off work around 10 p.m. and headed home. I live alone and always make sure my front door is locked before I leave for work, but when I got home, the door was unlocked. I knew for a fact I locked it when I left because, like I stated, I always lock it. I have severe OCD and would have not forgotten to lock my door as I am too obsessed with my routine to forget. I was thoroughly unsettled by this and immediately retrieved my 9mm pistol from the drawer next to the front door. I set the bag of fast food I picked up down and looked around the dark living room, fumbling for the light switch. Once the light flickered on, to my utter horror, my apartment was in complete disarray. Paperwork strewn all over the floor that had been put away in my office, and my social security card and birth certificate were among the mess. I quickly made my way into the office, and once I entered the room, I found that all the drawers were open and my computer had been turned on and was on the lock screen, as if someone tried to get into my computer. I checked the rest of my apartment and didn't find anybody. I put my gun back and immediately phoned the police. They arrived fairly quickly, took a report of the break-in. They asked me if I had any enemies or if I made anyone mad recently, to which I responded that I haven't. No such thing had occurred, and furthermore, I'm not the type to have quarrels with people. I was quite dumbstruck by what I had come home to. I cleaned up the mess and attempted to go to sleep, but tossed and turned most of the night while laying with my gun under my pillow. I would like to add that I'm also a very paranoid person, so the whole thing naturally had me freaked out, and every night I go to bed, I have my gun under my pillow. The next day I had off, so I left to go hiking with my girlfriend. We had started dating 6 months ago. I left around 9 a.m. and stopped by the Starbucks next to my apartment. While I sat in the busy drive-thru line, I looked up and noticed a man staring at me from across the street on the same side as my apartment complex. The thing that was most interesting about this man was how much of a resemblance to me he bared. This guy had the same exact hair as me, was about the same height and weight, wore glasses like me, and looked about the same age as me too. He didn't appear to have any expression on his face and just stood there, still as a statue, staring at me. It was my turn to get my order, so I grabbed my coffee, and when I went to pull out of the drive-thru, the man was gone. The day went on as planned, and my girlfriend and I had a great day together. I told her about the incident at my apartment and the man who looked like me, and she joked that perhaps my doppelganger had broken into my apartment. After I parted ways with my girlfriend, I made my way home. I was a bit nervous to return to my home, fearing that whoever broke into my apartment might have returned. Whatever they were there for that night, they seemed to be looking for something. I arrived back at my apartment and made my way to my apartment unit. I live upstairs, and as I approached the stairs to my front door, I heard someone coming down the stairs. I was still a good distance from the stairwell and was alarmed as I didn't have a neighbor who lived upstairs. Therefore, no one should be coming down those stairs. I stopped to see who it was, and to my shock, it was none other than the same man I had seen earlier that morning. He walked quickly and looked down as he walked. I shouted at him to stop, but as soon as he heard me, he took off running and hopped the fence that separates the apartment complex from a large field and disappeared into the night. I ran upstairs to my apartment and tried the doorknob, which was once again unlocked. I went inside and was horrified. All over my living room walls were pictures of me and my girlfriend from that day. Pictures that looked as if they had been taken right behind the tree line next to the trail that her and I were on. I once again called the police and reported the break-in. They came and searched the apartment as well as the entire complex. I told them about the man I saw running into the field. They searched the field and returned with a pair of eyeglasses and a wig. The police took the items they found into evidence and opened a case. They stationed 2 police cars outside my apartment and informed my apartment manager about what was going on. It's been almost a week since this all started, and nothing else has happened since. No more random break-ins or creepy photos of me and my girlfriend. I have also been staying with a coworker of mine until things die down. I have no idea why whoever is doing this is targeting me. Based on the items that the police found in the field, my guess is this person is actually pretending to be me for some odd reason. I don't know what any of this means. Update. I returned to my apartment and everything is how I left it. The door is locked and everything is fine. I feel relieved and I'm hoping that this nightmare is over. I only have one small lead that I'd like to share. I text my old friend to ask him if he knows anything, and he sent me back laughing emojis and then blocked me. This is normal behavior for him, however, as he has mental health issues and acts erratic at times. Once again, I'll try to update you guys if anything else occurs. Take it back to 2007, 2008. I was 16 when this began, 18 or 19 when it finally went to court. Picture a Norman Rockwell-esque suburban family. Parents, 3 kids, a yard and a dog. In the blink of an eye you'll miss it, USA. One random day, a neighbor man has a mild dispute with his neighbor. As a totally warranted response, neighbor man, which I'll be calling NM from here on out, takes every hose he has and floods their yard. Solid decisions lead to solid consequences, so naturally, he was fined for waste of water. My parents run the water in small town USA, and because NM lived a block away from us, he decided to drive over to the water district shouting that he is an acquaintance of my parents. Second solid decision of many to come from NM. Absolutely no one takes kindly to name dropper folks, so tuck that gem away under life facts. My parents come in and tells him even if his kids did this, they would have the same repercussions, gracefully glossing over the fact that other than maybe driving by one another, none of us had actually ever interacted with NM. NM repeats the name of the man working in the front desk as well as my parents' name and claims it's now personal and storms out. My family members and I began to see NM at random places constantly. The DMV, the grocery store, our respective jobs. Apparently, when you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and your parents pay for your house, you have all kinds of time to sulk. It went from random sightings while out and about to phone calls, the cliche 90s type of call, breathing, hangs up, and I can see you variety. At this point, NM was more of an annoyance than scary, but as I've stated, when you underestimate crazy, you lose every time. NM began parking across from our house, staying from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m., literally just sitting in his car, blasting music, staring at the house. For almost I had the determination and bladder of a racehorse, because what the fuck, who sits there for 10-ish hours? His music was trash too. Maybe he was a masochist and into self-harm, seeing how long he could suffer through that shitty music and a full bladder. I doubt anyone with semi-rational concept of social interaction could fathom why. This went on from 3 to 4 times a week to a nightly occurrence. Imagine being a 16-year-old female that doesn't even feel comfortable to change in her own room because of the prospect that he might see through the blinds somehow. Try to sleep knowing he's out there. We were prisoners in our own home. He began to get bolder. NM drove his car speeding up and down the sidewalk at my siblings and her partner while they were on the sidewalk out front coming home from a date. They both had to physically jump out of the way to avoid being hit. He made lewd gestures at me when I brought my dog out for a walk and was waiting for my siblings to come out to join us on the walk. It was so bad I ended up crying and going inside. This has been going on for a year at this point. The cops always say the same thing. There's nothing that we can do unless a threat is made against you or someone is harmed. My parents confronted NM after my incident, to which NM called the cops and they came asking us why we were harassing and threatening NM. I never understood why the system waits until you're a victim rather than prevent someone from being victimized. Almost 2 years in and it's Christmas time. My parent has a brain aneurysm without any lingering effects, which is extremely rare. I convinced my other parent, who had been living in the hospital with their sick partner, to come home and shower and eat. About 9 p.m., we get a knock on the door. A random man with ratty clothes, holding a Christmas present, says he is here to deliver it to my family's name. We ask him who sent him, and he says he can't say. We ask him who he works for, and he shoves a gift at my parent and leaves. We are obviously uncomfortable to open it. My parent decided that they needed to know what was in it, and opens the present. Inside is a 17-page document on the grounds of why NM is suing my parent that was currently in the hospital. Even I could tell it was fake, with the grammatical errors and typos. NM took the time to sit and type this up himself, thinking it would scare us. The document and the fake details he put in did not. The fact that this 40-something-year-old man was fixated on my family, that he sat and typed a 17-page fake document, did scare us. Things progress, and NM begins pacing in front of his car and pretending to have cell phone calls where he talked about pushing my parents down the stairs, or knowing where us kids went to school and worked, and how easy it would be to access us at any time. At the time, I worked closing shift that let me off about 1 a.m. He would park his car next to my car and follow me home. One time, I even tried to take random roads, and he still stayed right behind me, pulling up to the house with NM parked across the street. Think neighborhood streets with maybe 5 feet between a car parked on the side and one on the other. And having to get out and run to the door was a nightmare. We were all exhausted from not only the aneurysm scare, but also living looking over our shoulders. My parents' friend told her friend, who was a DA, about the situation. She called and came over and took our case pro bono. Testifying was a wild ride. We had to put in official statements prior to being called to the stand. We were not allowed to be in the room when a family member was testifying, nor were we allowed to talk in the halls as we waited for our turn. Imagine reliving 2+ years of traumatic experiences, being cross-examined where they made you out to be a liar, and then not able to have your family comfort or support you afterwards. This was not ideal. There was enough to put him away for 1.5 years, as well as to grant a felony restraining order. We moved while he was still incarcerated. My sister passed while he was in prison, and he immediately tried to sue her estate. She was 21 at her death, when he was released. He claimed her testimony of him running his car at her and her partner was false, and the only reason he got locked up. Not the case, as there were harassment and stalking charges, and that the money donated to a GoFundMe for her accident he was entitled to. There's so many more details, but this was already long enough. So NM, let's never ever meet again. You made us prisoners in our own home for years, are clearly still the same person and have not learned a thing from the time you were locked up. Okay, I don't know where to even post this, but I need advice. It's long, but it's weird as shit. A little over a year ago, I was approached via Twitter by a girl claiming she wanted to work together. Her location was not only in the same city as mine, but in the same community as well. After a brief convo in DMs, I realized this profile was strange. It was fake. I immediately blocked her and kept it moving. After this, it just gets so strange. This person continues to make fake profiles pretending to know me, and eventually went into using fake phone numbers and numbers to text me via WhatsApp and a texting app. I never gave them my number. It's weird enough that this person is persistent in stalking and harassing me. I'm a freelance entrepreneur. A great portion of my income comes from online. So if it was up to me, I'd just unplug. But I can't let this harm my career. This person has went onto my friends' profiles to contact them. I have no idea how. I am very discreet. I do not interact with these friends online, and somehow this person is finding them one by one over the past year and persistently harassing them, even making fake Facebook profiles to harass certain people I deal with. Not only my friends in the same area and group, but friends I have scattered in different cities. When I tell you, and this is not exaggerated, I have blocked over 100 Instagram, Twitter profiles, texting app numbers, and emails from this person. And keep this in mind, you need a new email to make an Instagram. I'm a single man. Of course I have lady friends. I have no bad blood with any ex or former fling. I'm on good terms with everyone as far as I know. But someone is targeting me and any person they think I date or talk to romantically. It has affected relationships with people I deal with. Either someone I know secretly hates me and wants to make my life living hell, or a stranger is obsessed with me and wants to run everyone around me away from me. I have prayed on this man, like honestly just asking God to reveal who this is or make it go away. After a year, the persistence is starting to wear down. I have no idea who this is pressing me. I reported to the police, but they haven't done much. I even tried to hire a digital private investigator, but the few I've contacted say they can't help me. Can anyone please give me some direction? It's sick. Something has to give. So back in 2014, I was in a rush to move to another apartment, and there weren't that many that were available for the time frame I wanted it for. At least not any good apartments, and definitely not in any good areas. I found a nice decent apartment with 3 rooms, and I moved in for the time being. At least I had a place to live in while looking for a better place. The suite was newly renovated, so I was supposed to get new appliances as well. There had been a mistake with the fridge, and the landlord told me that they would replace it as soon as possible, and I should expect it within the first 2 weeks of moving in. About a month later, I get a knock on the door. I went to look out the peephole and saw a man standing there with a piece of paper in his hand, and another man behind him. "Fridge," the man said behind the door. I opened the door and saw 2 men. The first man was a delivery guy. Behind him stood a man who didn't really care about his appearance, and honestly looked like he just crawled out of a dumpster. I thought he was just a helper. I let the man walk inside and place the fridge in the kitchen. The greasy man followed him inside and introduced himself to me. "I'm the new landlord," he said with a smile. "Really? Where did the other one go?" I was a bit startled, as he looked like a freaking homeless guy. Who the hell hired him to be the landlord? "Oh, she doesn't work here anymore." Well, no shit, I thought. The delivery guy then said goodbye and left, but the landlord didn't. "Where are your parents?" I told him that I lived alone. Big mistake. "No way. You look like you're a 15-year-old girl," he said with a smile. "Yeah, I get that a lot." "What do you need this big place for?" he asked. I just told him that I moved in there temporarily. He walked over to the kitchen and started opening and closing the fridge door. Just checking if everything's good. I just nodded and leaned back against the wall and watched. He just stood there, looking at the fridge and then back at me. Why doesn't he just freaking leave? I thought to myself. Then he said, "You're really cute. Look at you standing over there. You are so cute." I let out a laugh and thanked him. No major red flags yet. He then said, "I live on the first floor if you ever want to visit. We can hang out." I didn't know how to answer him. So I said, yeah, I don't think... Before I could say another word, he interrupted me. "I have no friends, and I don't talk to my family. I'm really lonely." Okay, red flags are going off now. I asked him why he didn't talk to his family, but he just brushed it off and changed the topic quickly. Then he started walking to the door and repeated himself once again. "Don't forget, first floor. Don't be a stranger." I followed him to the door and locked it when he left. I felt a bit uncomfortable, but soon forgot about it. About 3 days later, I get a phone call from the place I applied to. I had landed a part-time job at Best Buy. This was going to be my second job since I already had a job at an insurance company. I was excited to start at Best Buy, and I was hired in the tech department, and I absolutely love computers. Before I go on, I worked Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the insurance place, and then 3 days a week at Best Buy, mostly evenings, but it varied on weekends. So on the first day, I headed out of my apartment, took the elevator down, and was about to exit the front doors when I heard the familiar voice. Hey, it was the landlord. "Hey, what's up?" "Not much. Where are you going?" I ignored the question and told him I needed to go and walked out the door. I didn't need to drive to work because Best Buy was within walking distance. About 3 minutes into my walk, I noticed a gray car driving slowly beside me. I glanced over to see who it was, and it was the landlord. He rolled down his passenger side window. "Where are you going?" I told him that I was on my way to work, and that I would be late if we continued chatting. I said bye, and I continued to walk a bit faster. "Wait, let me take you. Where do you work?" "No, it's alright. It's not far away. I work at Best Buy. I'll walk." Another dumb mistake. I shouldn't have told him where I worked. "Come on, let me take you. I'm headed to Tim Hortons anyway. Need to get some coffee." Well, it didn't hurt for him to drop me off, I thought. He's going in the same direction anyway. I hesitated a bit, but then accepted his offer. I got into his car. I know, dumb of me, and let him drive me to work. It was a very short ride, but he did not fail to make me feel uncomfortable. When I finally got to my work's parking lot, I thanked him and reached to open the door, but it didn't open. "Hey, your door's locked." "Yeah, I have the habit of locking doors. Before I let you go, can you give me your number?" I lied to him and told him that my phone wasn't working and that I was just using it as an iPad. My phone wasn't on vibrate, and I was hoping to God that I wouldn't get a text message or any notification. "Okay, then let me give you my number." He grabbed a piece of paper and wrote his number down. "Give me a call, okay?" "Sure," I said. "When are you going to call me?" "I don't know. I'll call you when I get a chance to." "What time are you done? I'll pick you up." "I don't know. It's my first day. I don't know how long I'm going to be here for." I was hoping that he would just fall for my lie. He unlocked the doors and I stepped out of the car. I thanked him again and walked towards the store. Before leaving, he once again shouted, "Don't forget to call," and then drove off. Jesus, what a creepy guy this is. I threw the little paper with his number out and forgot about the whole situation. The next day I was scared to take the elevator since he always happened to be where I was going. So I decided to take the stairs. It led to the back door and I was sure I wouldn't see him. I did this for about 4 days and never saw him. Great, this works, I thought. On the 4th night, I was sitting in my living room watching YouTube videos on my laptop. It was around 10:30 p.m. and I was kind of dozing off when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Who could it be? I sat there quietly and didn't move, hoping that they would just go away. Another knock. I tiptoed to the door and looked out the peephole. It was the landlord again. "Hey, are you there? Open up." Confused and tired, I opened the door. This is the conversation that followed. "Hey, what's up? Where the hell have you been?" "What do you mean? I don't see you leave for work anymore. Did you quit or something?" No, I still go to work. I just have a weird schedule. You never called me. I was waiting for your call, and you never called. You promised. Sorry, I never got a chance to. I work 2 jobs, so I'm pretty busy. I came to your work and asked for you. They told me that they have no one by your name there. Did you lie to me about your name? I was caught off guard. I didn't know what to tell him. I had indeed lied to him about my name, but that wasn't what freaked me out. Why the hell had he gone by my work? You went by my work? Why? I said a bit nervously. Because I didn't see you around. I wanted to know where you were. He said, kinda irritated. I didn't respond. He then was just staring at me for a moment, hoping that I'd invite him in. But there was no way in hell I was gonna invite this guy in. I'm really tired. I need to work tomorrow. I'll see you around. Look, I need to talk to you. Can we talk? Honestly, I'm really tired right now. Can this wait? Whatever. Fine. He said this while walking away, still muttering something under his breath. I shut the door and stayed up for a bit, afraid that he would return. Luckily he did not return, so I finally fell asleep. So the next day came. I got ready for work again, and decided to take the elevator. The elevator door opened, and guess who was there? Yep, it was him. He asked me if I needed a ride to work, and I responded with a no. Are you sure? I told him once again that I didn't need a ride, and I got out of the elevator and went to work. This went on for months. By this time, I had already mentioned him to my manager and coworkers. They told me if I didn't show up one day, that they would call the police. Sometimes he would see me walk out the main door, and he would drop everything he was doing to come after me, asking me if I needed a ride. Other times he would ask me to hang out, and if he could take me on a date. Knocking on my door in the middle of the night was a pretty common thing. One time, he was in the middle of a conversation with another tenant. The tenant was complaining about something that had broken in his suite, and that he needed him to fix it. The landlord told the tenant that he should go to his apartment, and he would go grab his tools and follow quickly after. The tenant left, but he never went to go get his tools. Instead, he followed me outside and offered me a ride to work again. I told him no, and that he needed to do his job and to help the tenant. He said he didn't give a shit about the tenant, and all that he wanted to do was be around me. This creeped me out, of course. I would also see him at work sometimes. My manager had given me permission to go to the back room and just get out of sight whenever he would come in and look for me, which he had done several times while I was at work. I caught him walking around once, scanning the entire store to see if he could spot me, but he didn't, so he just left. He also mentioned to me once that sometimes he wanted to kidnap me, and he told me he just wanted to take me away and keep me to himself. I remember when he said it, he looked like he was hesitating, as if he was going to act on it right away. I found it a bit alarming, but I wasn't too scared. I don't know why. I guess I didn't realize how much danger I was in at the time, but I did play it cool, in case he was really going to try something. He would often say creepy things to me whenever he got a chance to talk to me. However, I don't remember all of it. It's a bit fuzzy to me. Now you might ask why I hadn't called the cops. Well, the police wouldn't have done anything since he had not caused me physical harm, so there was no point of calling them. Also, I had no proof that these things were happening, or of the things that he said to me, other than showing up to my work a few times. He would come to my work often to look for me if he didn't see me leave for work, or if he hadn't seen me in a few days. Or he would bang on my door in the middle of the night, asking me to open the door. I of course would ignore it. He had no way of reaching me anymore, and it was now clear to him that I was avoiding him. A couple weeks passed, and I was awoken by the sound of the fire alarm going off. Oh shit, that's right, there's supposed to be another fire drill today. It was my day off. I quickly went to see if I still had the note, to see when they were going to enter my apartment. Maybe I still had time to get ready and leave the apartment, since the landlord usually comes in with the person who checks the alarm. But I couldn't find the note. I got ready as fast as I could, and I was halfway done when there was a knock on my door. Crap, I thought. I opened the door, and there was the guy for the alarm and the landlord. They both walked in. The landlord didn't say a word to me. The guy checked the alarm and said it was good, and then they both left. I felt relieved. That went well, right? Wrong. Not even a minute passes, and I hear another knock on my door. Hey, it's me. Can you open for a second? I ignored it. Then the knocks got louder. Hey man, I know you're in there. Stop playing with me. I need to tell you something. Come on, open up. This continued for 2 minutes. When it was finally silent again, I had enough of this fucking guy. I had to do something about this. That night I was supposed to go to my friend's house to hang out with her, and also to return her laptop. She had given it to me to reinstall Windows. I got ready and left my apartment around 11 p.m. It was really nice out, and I wanted to walk to her house. It was a long walk, but I really loved walking. I took the elevator down, and when the doors opened, I saw him standing by the door. He hadn't seen me yet, so I had to act fast. Either get back in the elevator or sprint to the front door. It was a split decision. I went for the front doors, but sadly he noticed me, and I heard heavy footsteps running behind me. Before I go on with the story, I want to say that when you leave the front doors, you see a big parking lot. In order to leave the apartment complex, you need to walk around the building. So basically the front doors are pretty much the back of the building, and the back doors are the front. I know, it's weird. Anyhow, when I go outside, I ran halfway around the building and was looking behind me. There was no one there. I stopped running and started walking again, but something inside me told me to keep running. Little did I know, the reason why the footsteps had stopped behind me was because he had gone to the back doors to catch me there. When I got to the other side of the building, I saw that he had made it halfway around the back side of the building. I started running again and he started running after me. He was chasing me for about 2 blocks, while we both occasionally stopped to catch our breaths. I was close to the main road when I stopped running. My lungs were burning. I couldn't run anymore. Whatever happened next, I had to fight. He caught on. Out of breath, he said, "Stop, man. You're killing me. Stop doing this to me." I looked in shock, didn't say a word, still trying to catch my breath. "Why are you doing this to me, man?" he said, letting out a small cry. For the first time, I saw the look of sadness mixed with anger. "Stop following me," I yelled. "What do you want?" "Please don't go. Please come with me. Let's talk," he pleaded. "Talk about what?" He was still trying to catch his breath. I didn't care anymore. I was shaking, tired, and just wanted to see my friend. I didn't even make out what he said because of all the adrenaline. I started walking again. Turned around every 2 seconds to see if he was following me, but he wasn't. He just watched me walk away. And that's the last time I saw him. So creepy landlord, please, let's never ever meet again. A week or so after my 10th birthday, I walked to the corner store with a $5 bill and picked up a jar of ragu for my mom. On the way home, a man I'd never seen before fell in step with me and began talking. "Hi," he said cheerfully. "My name is Dr. Ramsey. I'm a pediatrician. Do you know what a pediatrician is?" I walked along silently, not replying, and hoping he would just take that as a sign that he should leave me alone. Subtitles were not his strong suit, though. He kept right on chattering. "Are your parents looking for a pediatrician for you? Of course, you're almost a big girl now. You'll be needing another kind of doctor soon, won't you? That's okay though. They can still bring you in to me until then. What's your name? You have beautiful hair. I was just on the way to get some suckers for the candy jar in my office. Do you like suckers?" Thankfully, we were nearing my house, so I ran forward, up the back steps, and through to the kitchen door. I didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of a very long, very scary ordeal. It didn't take long after that for Dr. Ramsey to begin showing up. At first, it seemed benign enough, at least to a kid. He would drive by nearly every day, smiling and waving. I told my mom, who said maybe it was on his way home from work. But then, the phone calls began. My dad called me into the living room, sat me down. He asked about the day Dr. Ramsey followed me home, and if I talked to him. He said I wasn't in trouble, but I just needed to tell him the truth. I told him no, and he asked if I was sure, and if I could be forgetting something. I told him no again, and he frowned, and then asked, "Then does he know your name?" I told him I didn't know. It turns out that's not all he knew. He knew my sister's name as well. Pretty soon, neither my sister or I were allowed to answer the phone. He would call several times a day at first, neither of us knowing what he was saying. Then, one night, one of my brothers told us that he was telling my parents that he was going to hurt me, and later my sister. Things got complicated after that. My dad had called the police, but as this was before there were stalking laws, there was not a lot that they could do. They told my parents to call back if he ever tried anything. My dad then called his friend from back in the day, who happened to be a cop. For the next month, my dad's friend escorted me to and from school. Suddenly, life as I knew it came screeching to a halt. I couldn't walk to school alone. I couldn't play outside. I couldn't walk to the Super America convenience store as well. When access to me was completely denied, things escalated. It was around this time he began threatening my sister as well. Then one afternoon, my sister, two of my brothers, and my mom were in the kitchen. One of my brothers saw a glimpse of someone in the garage. They've seen Dr. Ramsey before as well. Dr. Ramsey came bolting out of the garage, my brothers chasing after him. They ran all the way to the Cherokee Park, where they lost him in the trees. My parents called the police again, but nothing came of it. The only information they had was a description, and a name that was most certainly fake. A couple weeks later, we woke to find one of our dogs hanging from the side porch. She was a gorgeous saddleback German Shepherd, born the same day I was. We were all devastated. The cops said there was no evidence it was him, and ruled it accidental, but none of us believed that. His phone calls became more informative in the meantime. He would talk about who was home and who wasn't. If my brother would say that my dad was home, Dr. Ramsey would tell him who was really in the house. He would also talk about the house itself, about the window in the kitchen that he could easily open with a knife from the outside when it was locked, about the French doors that connected the living room to the side porch, and how the lock could be finagled from the outside if he jiggled it just right. That night, my dad put in some carpenter nails at the bottom of the French doors until he could get a new lock ordered and installed. My parents had to go to a company event at my dad's work. My older brothers were at St. West roller skating rink. My sister was on the phone with her best friend, and my little brother had fallen asleep on the floor. I was watching Devo on the midnight special with Wolfman Jack. It was late. Suddenly, the top of the French door swung inward, and for a few milliseconds before the nails in the bottom caused them to snap back, I could see a silhouette. My sister whipped the phone at the television, and we ran upstairs. About halfway up, we realized our little brother was still asleep on the living room floor. As quietly as we could, we slipped back down the stairs to get him. We all went into our bedroom and didn't turn on the light. This way we could see outside. We watched out the window for a while, and we couldn't find him. We crept down the hall to my brother's room to look. We looked down and could see someone standing at the back door. He knocked loudly. "What do you want?" my sister asked out the window. He stepped back and said, "Is this the Mercy residence? I have a pizza for delivery. Can you come to the door?" She scoffed at him, declaring she was not stupid. She could see that he didn't have a pizza, and she was calling the cops. He then promptly left. A short while later, my brothers returned home. We told them what happened, and they walked around the yard, watching out for him. They came back in, and things settled down. By now, we pretty much gave up on calling the cops, because it never helped us. So we just went back in, each of us, carrying a knife from the kitchen, just in case. Eventually, one of my brothers went into the kitchen to get a bowl of cereal as a snack. You know that sensation you get when you can just feel someone watching you? Yeah, he had that in spades. He kept looking around the kitchen, through the doorway into the dining room, at the windows. He didn't see anything, but you could still feel the eyes on him. So he went closer to the door to try to get a better look. The kitchen lights were reflecting off the windows of the door, so he couldn't see. He stepped closer, then closer, until he was right up to the door. Then he cupped his hands on both sides of his face so he could see. There on the other side of the window pane was Dr. Ramsey, smiling back at him. He turned to yell for my oldest brother, and when he looked back again, he was gone. They went out there to look for him, but didn't see him. The next night, we were at the table playing Crazy Eights, and my brother was restless. My sister asked him what was wrong, and he said he always felt like any minute there'd be a boom 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 on our door or window. Almost immediately after he finished that sentence, on the window right behind him. In the chaos, the two eldest ran out, but he was already gone. A couple weeks later, I was at school, and we were outside on the playground during recess. I was swinging upside down when I saw that now familiar blue Ford Galaxy cruising by, moving slowly. There he was, smiling and waving. He called my name, and I ran to the teacher and told her. By then, the school had already been told about him, so she took me inside right away and called my mom. That same day, my mom had gotten a call from the school asking her to verify that my dad was picking me up, as he called to say he was on his way, and she told him that my dad was not picking me up that day. Not long after that, I woke up one night thirsty. I went to the kitchen for a drink, and there, sitting alone in the dark, was my dad. On the table was a gun. He was tired of the police waiting until Dr. Ramsey tried something. He was tired of his children being terrorized. He was tired of being afraid every time he left for work that something was going to happen when he was gone. I sat with him for a time, watching, before he sent me back to bed. These events and many more took place over a period of 18 months. Then as suddenly as it began, it was over. He had vanished from our lives. The phone calls, the drive-bys with the creepy waves, everything. For a long time, during and after Dr. Ramsey's days, I would have this recurring nightmare in which I would wake up to find him standing over me as I slept. It took a long time before I felt like a kid again. I found out years later that when he was calling, Dr. Ramsey would tell my parents that he was going to rape and kill me, and later my sister, and there was nothing that they could do about it. I don't know what happened to him when he disappeared. I don't know if he got into a car wreck, locked in prison, in a coma, but sometimes I wonder if the wait ended for my dad when he was sitting in the darkened kitchen one night. I don't know. I'm not sure I want to. I'm a 20-year-old female and started working in a call center last year. It was a team of around 40 people, so we didn't exactly all know each other well. There was this one guy that was 35 years old. I'll call him Craig. I could always sense that he was watching me. He had perfect view of me at my desk from his, and his gaze would follow me whenever I walked anywhere. I never paid much attention to it because I didn't know him at all. One day I turned up to work and was called over by a couple of girls that I was friends with. I knew something was up because of the way that they were acting. They explained Craig messaged one of them asking for my number, saying how keen he was on me. I was immediately uncomfortable. There's quite an age gap between us, and he always gave me a weird vibe. I felt weird, but sort of brushed it off and laughed with my friends. I didn't let him get my number though. That day, we found out that Craig had lost his shit at the office after the rest of the staff had left the day before. He was abusing management and throwing things around the office. He ended up being fired and banned from the building. Later that night, I received a message request on Facebook. It was Craig. The message said how attractive he thought I was and that he could never stop staring at my ass, the fantasies he always had about me, etc. Basically just really disturbing stuff to hear from someone you've never even had a conversation with and was significantly older than you. So that's when it started. For the next 5 months I got a message every single day. Management and security at work were all informed of what was going on, as I had concerns that he would show up to the office to see me. I was constantly worrying that he would try to find me. I had thought of just blocking him, but my friends made the point that something like that could just aggravate him. I just put up with his messages and calls until one day it stopped, and I still don't know why. About 2 years ago, I worked at a movie store inside a mall. I've had tons of strange experiences with customers, but this one definitely tops them off. I was 20 at the time. This guy was over 6 feet, late 40s, very hefty, and always had this weird zombified expression on his face. He came in about once a week. One of my coworkers had even warned me about him, how he was a little off. But I still treated him with as much respect as I did with everyone else. One day he came in and talked for a bit, but it got a little awkward, and I kept trying to end the conversation and look busy by tagging items behind the counter. He stood there in silence, watching me for about 20 minutes, and then he finally left. A few days later, he came back in, and he walks up to me, holding a large container. He says, "I made 4 pounds of enchiladas at home today, just for you. I remembered that you liked Mexican food." I don't remember telling him that I liked it, but I do know that I went to a Mexican restaurant across the way every lunch break. I politely accepted it and put it in the back office. I was convinced he used his jizz for it. A few days later, he came back in and had a drawing for me of a dragon. Now, I love dragons, but I never told him that. The drawing looked like it took hours to make, and at this point, I was a little freaked out. I had him leave it on the counter so I could just throw it away later. Later on, I was given about a week vacation. During this week, I had cut my hair about 12 inches. The day I came back in, I had a shift with my manager. I told her all about the guy, and immediately she was weirded out for me. A few minutes later, I see a dude walking around the mall. He was going towards the exit and didn't even notice me. My manager tells me to go in the back office. I go and wait there until she comes in to get me, and when she does, she tells me that I need to make a report to mall security immediately. Apparently when I ran back there, he turned around to come in and walked all throughout the store. When she asked him if he needed any help with something, he said, "I can't believe she cut her hair," and briskly walked out. I go to the mall security office to make a report, and we went through all these videos from the cameras of when this guy would come to visit me. But there was one video that really stood out. It sends chills throughout my body just thinking about it. The video shows him pull up into the parking lot of the mall, and about 3 minutes later I arrive. This was really early in the morning and no customers were there yet, but there were cars in the lot. I didn't notice him at all. It shows me walking towards the entrance and him following me. Right as I open the entrance door, the man starts sprinting towards me. I walked in just in time. It shows him stop and stand right in front of the door, watching me through the glass as I walk farther away. He begins to normally walk inside the mall. I never noticed him behind me. That's the part that really messed me up. It was like watching the last footage before a kidnapping or murder on Dateline or something. The video gave security every reason to ban him from the mall, and they did. They told me later when they did a background check, he had 4 counts of having child pornography and was on probation. Back in community college, I rode the bus to and from college. The bus stop was walking distance to my house, so it was a huge help for me. When I'm on the bus, I always listen to music and look outside. Never at my phone, and never at anyone else. Guess that's how I never noticed the man always looking at me. One day I went to go on my computer to send memes and chat with my boyfriend through Facebook. Dude sits down in the chair next to me, looking at my memes, and says hi. Dude startled me immediately. He was like, "Hey beautiful, thought I'd finally come by and say hi. I see you on this bus a lot. I thought you might want some company, you know? Who are you? And I think you're pretty. I gotta go to class now. I leave, but not heading to class, just in case he follows me." He follows me a little bit, then turns around and leaves. After my class, dude shows up at my bus stop at the exact time my class ends and waits for me. Says the same stuff as last time. He repeats this for about a week until I finally tell the bus driver. The dude is following me and is creeping me out very much. The bus driver proceeds to close the door and drives off, leaving the creepy guy before he could get in. The creepy guy starts telling his classmates he's gonna get laid soon. The only reason I know is because one of his classmates is my best friend. I pointed out to him my creepy stalker, and my friend said he keeps talking and attempting to hook up with a chick, and that he said he might get laid soon. The next time I saw him outside of my class, I cussed him out. He proceeded to say, "Sorry baby, I won't do it again." "I'm not your baby, and back off, or I'm calling the police. I'm serious. I don't even know who the hell you are." After that, I never saw the guy again. This incident happened with me in my junior year of high school. My best friend had posted a story on his Instagram account, tagging me. A friend that he had from a previous school asked him about me because he found me interesting. My friend, not thinking too much of it, just linked my profile and he sent me a request. I accepted it and he slid into my DMs. I was a pretty naive 11th grader and he managed to get my phone number from me too. Turns out he was a desperate guy and somehow needed a girlfriend to show off in front of his friends. I know I shouldn't be mean, but this guy was 4 feet tall and ugly as fuck. The above mentioned discoveries were made much later. A few days later, he talked to me and I was flattered by his smooth talk. I didn't say yes, thankfully. A few days later, I came to know about this guy and immediately blocked him from everywhere: Instagram, Snapchat, and WhatsApp. The next day my phone was blown up with calls and messages from numerous fake IDs he had made just to contact me. I never replied and even asked my friend to tell him to stop contacting me. But that didn't stop him. He became my stalker, and things worsened when he started contacting my real friends and people from my previous school, somehow bringing me up in conversation and asking about me. A lot of people came up to me asking about him and telling me how stupid I was to talk to him. After much persuasion and his numerous female friends coming to me to unblock him, I did. He started telling me particular details of my life. It felt like he knew everything about me, things that only a few people knew about me. He also knew my address and started coming after school just to see me. By this time, he had befriended each and every one of my friends, and because he never physically stalked me, I couldn't do much about it. Thank God we weren't in the same school. My birthday is around the corner, so he made a fake account. It was my name, followed by birthday, and he started posting my images, which he collected by stalking my friends and me. I got that ID removed by getting it reported by all my friends, and I blocked him once again. Thank God he lost my number when he reformatted his phone, and I wasn't stupid enough to give him my phone number again. I'm in my senior year now, and realize how grave that issue was, and thankful that I had dealt with it somehow. I'm not dating any guy, and I hope nobody gets such a creepy stalker like I did. So, the teeny guy who wanted to date me so bad, let's not meet again. So this all started late in 2015, when I was still in high school. I was crossing the bridge to go to school, and this very friendly man stopped me and asked me if I could fill a survey out about budgeting. I said sure, and when I was done, he told me to fill out my contact details and gave me reasons like he was a social worker, etc. Dumb me, of course, gave him my contact number. I was so naive. But at the very least, I was smart enough to give him a fake name. In 2016, I started receiving random messages from this very same guy and was getting super creeped out by it. He knew which school I went to because when I met him I was wearing my uniform. And he started asking me personal questions. I tried to avoid all of them and generally didn't reply to him, but he kept texting me every day. And when he wished me happy Valentine's Day, I was like, nope. I blocked him because at that point I didn't feel safe at all. Later that year, we received a police notice calling for a witness because they arrested a few perverts in the area. In the notice they had several photos, and I saw the very same man that had approached me to fill out the survey. I was disgusted. Turns out that he would use those surveys as a tactic to approach female teenagers and take photos of them and harass them in text later. I was shocked as well. My school was in a nice neighborhood, and we all assumed there wouldn't be such creeps, but gosh, we were all wrong. I was glad he was caught by the police. To the photo-taking creep, let's not meet again. But I did. After he was arrested, I graduated and started schooling. It was an hours away drive from where I went to high school. I moved as well to the school dorm nearby. As I was walking home one day, I caught sight of him lurking at the bus stop nearby. I could never forget his face. He looked even more creepy, carrying a black bag, holding some papers that looked like the survey forms, while he was holding an old camera phone. I was super scared. How could he be here? Wasn't he arrested last year? Was he stalking me the whole time? I almost started crying and quickly called my friend and walked past him. Once he was out of sight, I ran home while on the phone. I was telling all my schoolmates to be careful, and soon enough the school was informed. The discipline master and a few PE teachers went to apprehend the stalker sometime later. They dragged him into the school's office and contacted the authorities. I was informed that he was released last year because of insufficient evidence. Apparently, the place where I live, taking photos of the girls in a not sexual nature is not a crime. They searched his flat, and there wasn't anything incriminating other than a creep ton of photos of female students. After this incident, he disappeared, only to be stalking other girls in other schools. How I wish we would never meet again. But I still see him roaming near my school and dorm every now and then, trying to be discreet with his little camera phone. I'm moving to a university soon, and it will be pretty far away from him. However, will I ever be free from the stalker again? I don't know, but let's not meet again. TV shows and movies usually depict abductors driving white vans or black vans. I didn't realize this until I decided to buy a white 1994 Dodge Ram cargo van to haul some of my gear I needed for work. Driving it, I've been pulled over by cops and searched 3 times for no reason, but that's another story. The point is, some people see vans as suspicious. One day while returning home, a woman pushing a stroller stared at me for a long time while I drove along my home street. We had speed bumps, and I had a lot of expensive, delicate gear in the van, so I was driving very slow. She stared at me, wide-eyed, the entire time. So I smiled at her, like a friendly neighbor does. She was staring so intently that she almost walked her stroller right off the edge of the curb. I thought it was funny, and I almost forgot about it. A week later, our HOA email thread heats up when a resident sends a notice that his wife and toddler were being stalked by a man in a white van. Fearing a pitchfork and torch mob mistaking me for a creeper, I replied to all, saying I lived in the neighborhood and I also drive a white van. I even provided my license plate number and home address. Big mistake. Jokingly, I added that I witnessed a suspicious person in the neighborhood as well. A woman with a stroller who was staring at me so long and hard, it made me uncomfortable. I provided the date and time of the incident to see if their alleged stalker was actually me. It was. Dude got triggered. He started sending me email after email, CCing everyone on the list, telling me he can read between the lines of what I was saying. His accusations became more and more ludicrous, and he started with personal attacks. Several neighbors on the email list replied saying that he was behaving badly. The emails eventually stopped, but things got even weirder. On several occasions while I walked my dog, a 10-ish-year-old girl would come out of her house, run over to me, and awkwardly chat me up about my dog, and gave me strangely intimate details of her life. I wondered why this child would talk to strangers, but thought maybe she just knew me from the neighborhood, so I politely played along. Then one day this girl shows up at my house. She said she was angry because her dad won't let her have a dog like mine. She said she wanted to visit for a while. I told her that I need to talk to her parents before I could let her visit my home like this. She said okay, and left, and I never saw her anymore. I have 2 daughters, and one of their friends told me the girl who was chatting me up was the daughter of the trigger dude from the HOA email list. He had been sending her out to talk to me and taking pictures. My daughter's friend was friends with this bait girl. Poor girl's dad was making his own daughter uncomfortable, which is why she confided in her friend. The dad was sending his daughter out to chat with me so he could accuse me of I don't know what. One detail I forgot to mention, I have dash cams in all my vehicles and CCTV monitoring my front door, so the initial incident as well as the girl coming to my door were recorded. I emailed the trigger dude and kindly offered him copies of the videos of each incident. I also told him I was concerned that his daughter was behaving inappropriately towards strangers. Apparently this scuttled his plan, and I never heard from him again. Hunting is an avid hobby of mine, and runs in the family. My favorite animals to catch are deer and boars, as they are quite a challenge to catch, and I love challenges. As well as general hunting, camping in the woods is therapeutic for me, as you're in nature's natural habitat, which can be greatly enjoyed when you're by yourself. Accompanying this are the type of people you meet while hiking. I've met people who shared food and campfire with me, and some even hiked with me in the gorgeous wilderness we call the woods. But most of the time, it's your animal friends who accompany you while walking and camping. I wish the story was about the above, but things took a plummet for the worse, and this is my story. I recently completed an assignment, which I would describe as long-winded and quite boring, even though it's my favorite topic, human biology. Due to this, I decided to take a 5-day hike across a vast stretch of woods, brilliant for hunting apparently. As a hunting enthusiast, I decided to hunt for some deer, and possibly some boar if I came across any. So I prepped up my water filter, packed up my tranquilizer and hunting equipment, as well as my pop-up tent and some snacks high in energy. I took a 3.5 drive to my destination. I was stoked and excited, as I could unwind around nature and overall enjoy the atmosphere that the woods provided. After what seemed like days behind the wheel, I arrived at what looked like an abandoned parking lot at 3 p.m. as all the bays were empty. The ranger's office looked like it hadn't been occupied for years. I parked and began my hike. The place gave me a very uneasy vibe, as the woods beyond the ranger's office were sinister in a way. I can't really describe what gave me this uneasiness, but I honestly chalked it up to the place looking abandoned and creepy. Either way, I headed out onto the path and began scouting the area for animals. I gotta be honest, this set of woods was exquisite. The sun was shining through the trees and the animals were up and active. I came across a few deers, but no boars unfortunately. Fast forward to 8:30 p.m. It was uneventful to be honest, and it was getting pretty dark and gloomy now, as it's mid-November. Now, I need to add that I'm quite a paranoid guy, as my house was burglarized at the age of 15. All was okay in the end, but the paranoia of something or someone lurking in the shadows stays with me in the back of my mind when I'm out alone at night. Anyway, excuse the babbling. I then whipped up a fire, cooked up some marshmallows, and warmed up some beans. I ate away, minding my own business. After this, I decided to go for a late night hunt, as I did a 2-week course on how to hunt prey in the woods when it's dark, and I think it really paid off. 15 minutes later, I put the fire out as I was prepared to go on a late night hunt. But then, my blood ran cold as ice, and my hands started to shake when I saw a silhouette of a man about 100 meters away from me. It was unexpected, so it initially freaked me the fuck out. As well as this, I noticed a small pocket knife in their hand, and it looked like they were crouching and stalking something. I believed it was a man about 6 feet tall, and his back was facing me, so I believed he didn't notice that I was there, which was a godsend. However, it could just be another hunter like myself. After shitting bricks while watching this man for 5 minutes, he disappeared into the inky sky, and I got over it pretty quickly as I thought it was a fellow hunter like myself. I honestly wish that was the case. Fast forward an hour, and it's around 9:45, and I'm feeling confident enough to go back into the black wilderness and catch a deer or two, or maybe even a boar. I pinpoint where my tent is with a map, and I went on my way with my hunting equipment. 10 minutes later, I'm practically in no man's land, as everywhere around me was pitch black. I was stalking a deer, which hadn't noticed me, and was about 50 meters in front of me. I grabbed my tranquilizer and placed the deer in my sights. That's when I heard twigs snap. My eyes darted, my legs went into jelly mode, and I jerked my neck to the source of the noise. What the fuck? A fucking silhouette appeared out of the trees to the left of me, about 50 yards away, and just watched me. Not the deer, but me. The deer was long gone by now, so it was just me and an unwanted guest. His size concluded to me that he was the same guy as before, roughly 6 feet, 200 pounds. He stared at me, and I stared back, my body still as a stone. But then my sudden outburst of adrenaline was making me shake. I couldn't see his face as it was too dark. Fuck, was he the late night human butcherer? Am I not gonna see daylight again? I just about choked out. Who's there? I tried to say in the calmest voice I could, but the fear was evident when I asked the question. The man raised his hand with a pocket knife and pointed his index finger towards me. That was it. I fucking bolted it north, while mildly tripping over and hitting my head on tree branches. Twigs snapped rapidly behind me as the son of a bitch was chasing me. I looked back and saw his vacant right hand brushing the tree branches to the side of him, his knife gripped tightly in his left hand. I then realized that during it all, I had dropped my tranquilizer. Fuck that shit, I can buy a new one. I know, I should have shot the guy, but it's amazing what one can forget when in a horrific situation, even if it's a gun. I wasn't going back for it. A ton of thoughts were going through my mind while I was fleeing. Why me? What does he want? Money? Food? What could it fucking be? That's when I honestly thought I was gonna piss myself. As then he said one rapid tone, "Isn't this fun?" He then had the goddamn audacity to start laughing in a patronizing way, and I couldn't take it anymore. I sped up, and I'll tell you now, it's amazing what the human body can do when adrenaline and natural instincts take over. I never ran so fast in my life. I made a hard right, dove into some bushes nearby quietly, and eventually lost the guy. I heard footsteps going the opposite way, and it turns out that I went in a huge circle as I could see my tent only 50 meters away now. I was fucking shaking, and tears started to form, but I had to stay strong. I just had to. What would my father do in this situation? I turned my ears into the inky darkness and heard nothing, saw nothing. I was not going to turn my phone light on, as I'd be an open target. I checked my watch and it was now 10:30. I was in my tent for 10 minutes. I sat there listening to every small noise I could hear in the woods. Snap. I held my gasp as I heard a twig snap behind my tent. And then a low sinister voice. "You think you can run? I win." With that, my tent was being sliced open and the fucker's head popped in. He was fucking licking his lips and his eyes were locked with my eyes. "You lose," he screams as he pulls the knife out. Fighting, not my strong point, but the gym made me a pretty strong guy. So he tried to stab me and I grabbed both of his arms and fended him off from plunging his blade into my torso. I tried to disarm him and he laughed during the whole process. I thought he was trying to intimidate me. However, I was ready to kill. Not a deer, not a boar, but a human. I restrained his left wrist, but the knife was inches away from going into my foot. As I stepped onto his right hand, I pulled back on his left wrist. Then, snap. His wrist was snapped. He let out a blood-curdling scream. I had the upper hand on this fucker and took advantage of this. I got the knife from his shattered hand and gave him a taste of his own medicine. I sunk the knife into his right hand and he screamed. I laid a few punches and I think I popped his nose, but I have no regrets. I grabbed my arm in pain as he made me bend in an awkward position when he was on top of me when he first ripped into the tent. But honestly, I couldn't care less about my injuries. He tried to kick me, but I punched him in the face until he was unconscious. I checked my phone and I had no phone service. Fuck, I panted. I picked up this fucker into a fireman's lift, and I remembered on my way there was a ranger's office that was exactly west of my tent. After an hour struggling with a killer on my shoulders out cold, found the ranger station, and to my surprise, a young man around 20 was there. I collapsed to my knees as I explained the situation, and it turns out this guy slashed my left bicep, but the adrenaline numbed out the pain. So when it finally wore off, I was in pain and noticed the laceration. The ranger called for backup and they eventually arrived. I don't know how long it took. Screw my belongings, I wasn't going back out there to retrieve them. The ranger offered to drive me to the nearest hospital in my car. The night stalker was taken away, but was semi-conscious. The next day I was woke up in the hospital to an officer. What he said next is burned into my memory and will never be erased. When I first saw the killer, his back was towards me. The knife was in his left hand and he was crouching as I mentioned earlier. It turns out that he was stalking another hiker who was brutally murdered and mutilated at the scene. They found chloroform at the scene, hence why I never heard any screams or cries for help. I vowed from there on never to go hunting by myself again. The next time I went hunting was years after this incident, with 4 of my mates. Although the woods have a beautiful atmosphere and vibe, never judge a book by its cover, as tables can be turned within a blink of an eye. For all of you that go camping and hiking, stay safe, and remember, don't think that these things can't happen to you. Okay, this happened to me last year. Keep in mind, this is told in the perspective of a female. I started school at a local community college. I was looking to make new friends since I never really had the opportunity before. I was a weird fat kid throughout elementary and high school. College was a chance for me to reinvent myself, to actually make friends and fit in for once. It's college. No one gives a fuck if you're weird. You're all just trying to get through finals, after all. Well, I had class with this one kid. Let's call him Creep, because that's what he was. Anyway, me and the Creep had our ITE class together. I'd see him every day, but didn't talk to him much. He stayed in his corner of the room. I sat with my friend, and the older lady, we'll name Jay. I had a TARDIS backpack. Yeah, I know. It's not bigger on the inside, by the way. Anyway, he saw this and said it was cool. I said that was cool and we talked a bit about our interests as we walked to our next class. He was into cosplay, as was I. And we both enjoyed BBC programs along with anime. He seemed friendly, and I went about my day. Things got uncomfortable after that. He started showing up everywhere that I did. Mostly he would invite himself to lunch with me and my friend S. He was disgusting. We went to lunch one day, and he ordered this burger with peppers, onions, and mayo. Mayo is the bane of my existence, mind you. He didn't use napkins. The thing smelled terrible, and he wiped it on his already stained pants. It wasn't pleasant to say the least. He kept popping up places and inviting himself to lunch, and I was beyond done with him. I have a habit of attracting weird people. I don't know why. I was just ready to cut and run if it came to it. Anyway, he invited himself to lunch with me again when S wasn't present. He said he had a crush on S, and I knew S went through a bad breakup. I told him to leave her alone, but he was insistent on me seeing if she liked him. I said no, leave her alone. He left after that, and I enjoyed my shitty spaghetti. Then the freaky thing happened. I was leaving to go to my car one day when I ran into him. We talked a bit, but I was trying to get away from him, but he really insisted on talking. Eventually, I tried to excuse myself, saying that I was going to go to my car and I would talk to him later. He followed me. He said it was fine and walked with me towards my car. He then proceeded to tell me a funny story about him getting drunk and punching his crazy ex in the face. Like that would totally impress me or some shit. I did what any normal person would. I looked him in the eye and said, no. Got in my car and drove off. He fucked off and left me alone after that. That wasn't the really creepy part though. No. I learned a few weeks ago, he killed someone before. Apparently, he got into a fight and stabbed someone in self-defense. The circumstances were more than shady though, but the police in my area are pretty shitty. The guy the Creep stabbed ended up dying. So yeah, I was stalked by someone who killed another person. Ain't I lucky? "2002. I was a 14-year-old girl starting freshman year. I was an awkward, nerdy girl that didn't know how to handle attention from boys, so you could say I made things worse for my situation. I had a knack of making friends with weird people that no one really liked, but I tried to be friendly with everyone I met, so it wasn't a big deal to me. Unfortunately, that was also my downfall. Clubs were a very big deal, and they actually had an anime club, so of course I was all about that. First club meeting, I sat next to a couple of friends and soaked it all up. I thought I was finally with my people. Then here comes Stalker Kid. I'd use his real name, but to this day I have no clue what it is. He sat in front of me. Being the person I am, I said hi. I could tell he was uncomfortable and didn't know anyone, so I was just being nice. And boy did this guy cling to me after that one word. At first, he would just find me during lunch and just stand there mumbling things to me. He has such a soft voice, high-pitched, that you just felt unnerved when he spoke to you. The way he would look at you as he spoke made it so I could never look him in the eyes. After a while, it became more of him asking me about personal life and what I was into. Me being dumb and naive, I tried to be friendly and chat while feeling incredibly uncomfortable. After a while, my friends and I would move to different tables, benches, and even hallways to avoid him, but he always found me. After about a year of this, my best friend finally told me that if I didn't tell him to fuck off, he would. I really didn't want him around anymore, so sure, go ahead. So one day during lunch, here comes Stalker Kid with his signature greeting, barely above a whisper. Hey. My buddy just goes, dude, she's not interested. Fuck off. Looking hurt, he shuffles away. I was like, man, you didn't have to be so hard on him. But, thanks. I didn't see him much around school after that, except for club days, where he would just sit across the room and stare at me while my best friends glared at him. Fast forward to me being 16 and driving now, minus the awkward club days. I didn't really notice anything from him. That was until an old gray beat up car started parking next to me and extremely close. One day after school, he was waiting for me in the car. He started asking me how I'd been and about prom and all that stuff. I was trying to rack my brain on how he knew this was my car, and unless he had been watching me before and after school, I don't know how he would have. I started getting there later and leaving later to avoid him because he was like clockwork. Finally, a boy I used to be friends with in elementary school was walking around with me. He made a comment that the guy is always next to my car and asked if he was my boyfriend. I immediately said no and told him that he's always following me around and I hated it. It was really starting to freak me out. Bless this guy, because he walked straight up to him and scared him off, threatening that if he ever parked next to me again, he would kick his ass. I figured maybe that was enough to keep him away. So again, there was a small space of time where I would hear nothing from him, except for my friends who had classes with him telling me how creepy he was. One of my friends had art class with him and said he would draw naked women consistently in his books, all big busted and in sexy poses. Junior year is wrapping up, and I started taking my best friend, Phil, to and from school. At some point, Phil started noticing that a little gray car was always heading the same way after school, and made a joke saying, what if Stalker Kid lived right next to him? Haha, small world, right? One day, as usual, the little gray car was following us, so we took a detour. Sure enough, he was with us step by step the whole way, and it was no longer a joke. We both started freaking out. I pushed the gas pedal as hard as I could and noped the fuck out of sight. I went home and told my mom everything, because at this point, I knew this wasn't normal. She shoved it aside, saying I was probably seeing things. Well, it came time for our end of year club party. Stalker Kid was a senior, so I would never have to see him again. For whatever stupid reason, I offered to host a party at my house, thinking he has never gone to one yet. I was terrified when my dad let him in the door. I don't remember giving him an invitation to the party. Someone else must have given it to him. He spent the whole party talking to me, my dad, being all buddy-buddy with him, asking me where my room was. I just wanted to cry and hide. It was all downhill after that. I remember there were days where I could hear a car pull outside my front door, and my room having the window that saw out to the front. I would call my buddy Phil and peek to see if it was him. 3 times in 1 month, I just hid under my desk and cried on the phone with Phil. Other events from school would be him asking a girl I played softball with to prom, only to dump her and follow me all night. This includes 2 and after the prom, where I never saw him in person. Our high school had a radio, TV channel for kids to run, and during prom, they would record us going up and down the stairs and playing around in the gym at after prom for the parents to see their kids having fun. It took one of my friends to point this out, but it showed me playing DDR for a while against my friend Phil, and Stalker Kid was right behind me watching for a good 5 minutes. I never knew. And the one that still creeps me out to this day is graduation for his class. Our classes were so big that they did a day and night ceremony, where all the students had to attend the day one. I was scanning the crowd to see my friends who were graduating when I saw a hand wave as I passed by. I looked back, and of course it was Stalker Kid waving at me. How he picked me out of a crowd of 1,000 people, I'll never know. 2016 year was great. No signs of creepy Stalker Kid to this point, to the point where I started to forget about him. I graduated. I chose a college in town, get a job at the local retail store, and move on. Life is beginning to be normal. I work the gaming department, so you get the weird randos once in a while. One that I saw a lot was this little Mexican guy with glasses. This would be important, and he never purchased anything, but would just walk around from time to time. Then, Stalker Kid comes strolling in the doors and walks into gaming and just talks. I asked how he knew I worked there. He says his friend saw me and knew that we were friends. I tried to radio for help over and over for someone to come and get him out. Finally, a big guy from computers walks over and asks me for my help in the back. Once he pulls me to safety, I tell him everything. From that point on, security is made aware and is told to watch out for this guy. Of course, he wasn't doing anything physical, so all they could do is watch out for him. So every time he came in, they would walkie me and I would dip into the back warehouse. I started seeing his friend consistently, who we called Ninja Friend, and all he ever did was walk around on his phone. I began to suspect that he was texting Stalker Kid to tell him I was at work, because sure enough, 10 minutes later, he would come in too. So I tested the theory and started walking randomly around the store. At one point, a friend who worked the register asked me why I would do this, so I had her take a walk with me on her break. I told her that this ninja friend would follow us everywhere, even just down a random aisle. Sure enough, he did this and she began freaking out. A few minutes later, I told her my stalker would walk through those doors. Again, sure enough. So I'm making my way to the warehouse, and out steps Ninja Friend from an aisle and says, "She's right here." I just stare at him like, who the hell do you think you are? Stalker Kid walks up behind me and asks why I'm running away from him, and he lost my number and asks if I can give it to him again. I say, knowing damn good well I would never really give it to him, sure. I go to the warehouse and write, "This is where I work, don't ever come here again," and hand it to him. Glare at his friend, and then call security on the walkie. After that, I sit down in the warehouse and just break down. Security tells me later that he also cried when they took him out. Later that day, as I'm leaving work, security offers to walk me to my car. This of course isn't the rules, but just friends caring about friends. So I say sure. Stalker Kid is out by my car waiting for me. So this is where security says screw it and calls the police, which we are conveniently next to their headquarters. He books it when he sees the car. A few years go by, nothing comes up. I buy a fancy new car. I'm thinking that did the trick and I'm finally free. It's now 2012. My buddies and I are leaving work, ready to hit a night at the bar, per usual Thursday deal. We are walking out the door, where we all have to stand and wait to hear the alarm sound, to verify it's armed. As we are walking out, I hear it, that awful sound, "Hey." I cringe, grab my friend's arm and turn. There he is leaning on the car, waiting. My friend recognizes him and asks him what he wants. Stalker says he just wants to talk to me. His other friend is sitting in the back seat of his car, just staring at me blankly. I start to think the worst. If my friend leaves me here, my gut tells me I'm not coming to work the next day, or ever. I'm terrified that he's had all these years to think about our last encounter, where I wrote that note that made him cry. I grab my friend's arm tighter. My friend goes off, pretends to be my boyfriend, and rips into him. My friend is about 2 feet taller and much, much bigger. They get into it, and I'm just standing in the parking lot. And I'm a terrible person for this, but I'm sure you understand at this point. I was thinking, kick his ass. He spooks Stalker Kid so bad, and I'm pretty sure he pissed himself before getting in his car and booking it out. Ever since, if he comes into my store, my friend stares him down, and Stalker Kid leaves. Never has he bought anything in all these years. Years later, I've moved on and gotten married, and moved out of town. But just recently, we moved back to start a business, and to this day, I still feel myself looking behind me while in stores just in case I randomly bump into him. He's caused me to have anxiety, mental and emotional pain, fear and trust issues for a decade. Even after moving on, I still feel the effects today. So I'm a 20-year-old girl, and it's like I'm just straight up creepy old man bait. I don't go shopping alone often because it makes me uncomfortable being stared at. So I usually go with my boyfriend just to make me feel better. On this occasion though, he was at work. Desperately needing some snacks, I headed to my local Kroger. a relatively large grocery store nearest to my house. This particular Kroger is arranged awfully, so I usually end up doubling back because I don't realize I missed something. Because of that, it makes it really obvious if someone is following you. I started on the left end of the store, just picking out some fruit, when I noticed this very old man in overalls staring at me. Not thinking too much of it, I smiled politely and just walked past him. After a couple minutes of shopping and looking around, I noticed this man is still pretty close. He hasn't picked up any additional groceries, so I'm getting a little uneasy and just walk away to the other end of the store to get some ice cream. Now I'm stopped, looking at the ice cream for a while because there are so many options. After looking for a while, this creepo comes over and starts staring at the ice cream directly next to me. At that moment, I decided I didn't need ice cream anymore, and I was done shopping. Mind you, the old man, after staring at the ice cream with me for 5 minutes, didn't get any. From there, I booked it around the corner and ran all the way to the end of the aisle, took a sharp turn, and hurried to the checkout. I got in line and then offered a random person about to check out the spot behind me. I figured this would give me some time. Believe it or not, the old man comes to the checkout stand behind the person that is right behind me. I start quietly talking to the lady checking me out and ask them to take a very long time with the old man because he had been following me the whole time. They just laughed it off like I was some dumb teenager and said, "Yeah, that's old men for you," when I was generally worried about my safety. At this point, I'm sure you're thinking, call the cops. Yeah, that's what my dad said too, but I just didn't think about it at the moment. After checking out, I ran to my car and started putting away my groceries as fast as possible. I had an entire cart to put away. I finally got the groceries in my car, and since I was eyeing the door the whole time, I saw the old man come out the doors and beeline for me. I slammed the trunk of my car, and he was waiting for me at the driver's door. I locked the car and ran across the parking lot while calling my boyfriend to see what to do. I'm crying, trying to get a hold of him, but he's at work and of course he doesn't see my call. At this point, I'm hiding behind a Kia Soul, hoping the old man walks towards me so I can quickly run back to my car. He does, so I jump at the opportunity, and I'm unlocking my car as I run. I jump into the driver's seat and zoom home. He watched me drive away while he was standing in front of his red sedan that was on the other side of the parking lot from where I was parked. I took tons of back roads to make sure I wasn't followed by that stupid creepy old man. My mother, grandmother, and I lived in the same house but in 2 different flats in a very short street with only 6 houses in total. We moved here in 2012 and everything was fine. One day there was an old man moving into another house in the street. He seemed very nice, but my image of him changed quickly when these incidents began. My grandma lives on the first floor, so everyone walking past the house can technically look into her flat when she has her blinds open. She started telling us about how she sometimes sees 2 feet under her blinds of the big window, always the same shoes. One day she pulls the blinds open when the shoes are there, and guess who it is? Yeah, the old man. Turns out he had been watching her for quite some time through her windows and even from his balcony, which had the perfect view of the big window in her living room. As if that wasn't bad enough, he started talking to me when I got home from school because I needed to pass his house. We didn't know each other. We had nothing to do with each other, not even remotely. He began asking me how I was, if school was finally over, and so on. I didn't like it, but politely answered. One day, he started asking me about my grandmother and mother, how they were doing, etc. I was very creeped out by this, given the history of the incidents. I started ignoring him, and after a few days of ignoring him, he got the hint. But there's more. My grandmother has sort of a caregiver who comes to her flat twice a week to clean and deliver groceries because she can't walk or bend over that well anymore. This caregiver is also the one that comes to our stalking neighbor's house to help him. After my grandmother had brought it up to us that he was watching her the other day, the caregiver told us that the old man would want hugs from her, look at her ass, cleavage, etc., and also sometimes touch her in places like her waist and her thighs, supposedly unintentionally. As if this wasn't already more than terrifying, he also rides a bus sometimes. Sometimes I'm in that same bus, or sometimes he even rides a school bus for some reason. Anyways, one day I was waiting for the bus, and there was this girl with a headscarf waiting for the bus too. The man walks up to her and starts talking to her. I had my headphones in, so out of curiosity, I pulled one of them out and listened to what he was talking about. I was shocked when I heard him talking about immigrants being a problem for the US and that they should get out of the country and such, but in a way that he didn't say it directly, but rather hinted at those things. The girl was really confused, and then the bus came, which she seemed relieved by, understandably. This was just a section of the creepiest and worst incidents. There are many more that are not as creepy. Okay, so this happened to me a few months ago. A new family recently moved into the neighborhood, and at first, they seemed nice. It was a woman and a man, and their 2 kids, 1 boy and 1 girl. Since they were new, my family presented themselves to them and brought them a welcoming gift. Since they were unpacking, my family asked if they needed help, and they accepted, which meant I had to help. There was this one box that caught my eye, and as I went to get it, the man stopped me and said that he can get it. That's when I started to wonder, like crazy, what was in that box. That night for dinner, my family invited the new neighbors, but they declined, so it was just my family. I asked my mom if she knew what that box had in it, cause it looked weird. She told me not to judge, and it was probably just private things, so I shouldn't get into other people's business. Later that night when I was sleeping, I heard her back door open, and footsteps coming in. I locked my door. I wanted to call the police, but I didn't know who it was, so I just forgot about it. The next day I woke up and checked the back door, and it was unlocked. I was creeped out and told my mom that I thought the family came in and did something to the house. She then called me crazy, and I have to be respectful, and what if it was the other way around? After she told me this, I have to hang out with the little boy because he left all his old friends in his old town and needed someone to play with. So later that day I hung out with him at the park, near my neighborhood. I asked him his name, and he told me it was Diego. Which was crazy because my name was Diego. At first I was like, oh my god, we have the same name. Then he said, like Diego from Grachi. And there's a TV show I watched called Grachi, and it had a character named Diego. I was a little creeped out at first, but shrugged it off as a coincidence. Later that night at dinner, I felt like my family was being watched. After dinner, I spent the night at my friend Jake's house. The next day, I ran into the boy and his mom. He said, how was the sleepover? I replied, how did you know about the sleepover? He said, your mom told me. I went straight back to my house and asked my mom. She said she never said anything. But then my mom said something that scared the crap out of me. She said the neighbor's mom, let's call her Asia, asked her if she could have the number to her doctor. My mom never mentioned this to Asia. She then started getting suspicious. We secretly called Uncle Larry, who is a police officer, to investigate the house. He found something really chilling. It was a camera in our kitchen. It was hidden, and that's when I remembered someone came in through the back door that leads to the kitchen. A day goes by and they check the footage, a now probable cause. My uncle goes to their house and knocks on the door. The mother opens the door, and he says he needs to investigate and ask some questions. She complied, but said she had to do something first, but he said no, and she had to wait outside with her husband and kids. The police went into the house to search it. There they found a box full of cameras that looked exactly like the ones he found. That family had been spying on us the whole time, and who knows who else they were spying on. We pressed charges and the family moved somewhere else. I worked with this guy. We had a work outing, which included drinks. I got a little too drunk to drive home, so he offered me a ride. A few others accepted the ride along with me. He dropped them off first, and dropped me off last, and asked me if I had feelings for him. I told him I thought he was really cool because we had similar interests. I then promptly reminded him of our no fraternizing agreement we signed before we started working there. I also told him I wasn't interested in him romantically. From that evening on, he would always find ways to tell me he had hot dates that would then cancel on him, and he would ask me if I wanted to go out for drinks. It felt like he was trying to make me feel bad, so that I would go out with him, but I never accepted. He asked me out to dinner dates and to the movies a handful of times, which I always declined and reminded him that I had no interest in him that way. A few of my coworkers caught him looking through my phone. I assume he was looking for texts from other guys. He accused our other male coworkers of sexually harassing me when he saw that we were friends on Snapchat or even text, even though there wasn't any type of sexual relationship going on between them and I. He would send videos of me dancing in a club to our coworkers. Meanwhile, I had no idea that he was there or that the videos existed. I had many coworkers coming up to me and asking me if I had any knowledge of the videos and if I felt safe. He showed up to my house a couple of times without me knowing or inviting him. He knocked once and took off. Another time he just stood there and left without knocking. We only knew this because of my roommate's motion-censored security cam that would send us notifications and videos when there was activity. My biggest mistake was accepting another ride from him after all of this. I was in a group setting again, so I thought it would be safe. My coworkers were sort of aware of this, and they asked if I could be dropped off first. He went about dropping them all off first. I stayed in the back seat, and he begged me to move to the front seat. But I didn't. At the end, he demanded why I wasn't interested in him, and why I didn't like him since he was such a nice guy. At this point I was furious, and honestly terrified. I started screaming at him, pointing out to him all the times I told him I wasn't interested, and declined all his invitations. I opened the door while he was moving, and he slammed on the brakes. I think I startled him. I jumped out and sprinted home. Not 10 minutes later, I get a text from him, asking again, when did I lose interest in him, and if it's because he's too nice, or if it's because he gets too many other hot dates. As if I didn't spend 5 minutes telling him I was never interested in him, and as if I just didn't sprint out of his car. I blocked him on everything, brought it up to my manager the next day and filed a report, then put in my 2 weeks. This happened in early 2017. I was a 23-year-old girl and had just finished college. The field I studied was not huge in my area, so I decided to leave. I moved to the biggest city in our country to make a post-graduation course and look for a job. As I was still unemployed, I decided I would wait to make a long-term rental contract, worrying about a possible bad commute to work. In the first couple of months, I was switching from Airbnbs and hostels all the time. I was already tired of this. I decided this would be my last move, and then, with or without a job, I would settle. I was running out of money, and decided to stay in a dorm, in a hostel next to where I was taking classes. Sharing a bedroom is not a problem to me during a trip, but when you're living somewhere, trying to create a routine, sharing a bathroom with some complete strangers, just sucks. I would share the dorm with 3 guys, but it's not with any of them that my bad encounter occurs. They were nice, apart from one of them snoring so bad at night. No biggie. In another dorm, although, was the creepiest person I've ever seen. He was in his mid-30s, and he was not traveling. He was native from the city where we were in, and was using the hostel as a new house, since his parents kicked him out of theirs. He introduced himself and tried to be nice and flirty with me. I was polite initially, but declined his advances. He wouldn't stop. He started following me all day long in the hostel. Anywhere I went, he would show up in less than 5 minutes. On the second day there, I left the hostel to a job interview, and by the time I arrived back to the hostel, late at night, he was seated alone on the front stairs, waiting for me. He told me this like it was the most natural thing on earth. He would buy me snacks, ask me out, try to get information about my personal life. All these things when I already made it clear of my lack of interest in this friendship. All this happened in 3 days. I was exhausted of his presence, but what I didn't know is that it could have went worse. As soon as one of the guys that was sharing the dorm with me left, he asked the hostel staff to switch dorms so he could stay in the same one as me. Obviously, he didn't tell me this, so imagine how surprised and disgusted I was when I saw him coming into the dorm with all his belongings. I was so scared of his presence that I slept wearing jeans to avoid any sort of advantage that he could take while I was sleeping. The very next morning I decided to leave. The situation had got worse, and I couldn't handle it anymore. While I was packing, the guy showed up, noticed what I was doing, and started to cry, asking me not to leave him. Then, to make things even more creepy and disgusting, he told me that he would miss seeing my face while I was sleeping, and thank God that he had taken photos. I was trying my best to stay calm, but I lost it when he told me he had taken pictures of me while I was sleeping. I took his phone out of his hand and asked him to see the pictures, and deleted all of them. There were a bunch of photos of me sleeping in the night before. I left the hostel, and I really regret not reporting him to the staff. Crazy lonely dude in the hostel, please, let's never meet again. This happened a few years ago at a gaming event in London. I'm very active on Twitch, and a bunch of my friends were traveling from all over to go to this event. I was a moderator for this channel, and another one of the mods was from the Netherlands, who I was very good friends with at the time. He told me he wasn't going to the event because it was too expensive. Skip forward to the day of the event. I get a message on my phone from this mod saying he's outside of the event and he would like to meet up with us. Turns out, he had been planning to come all along, but was just aiming to surprise us with his presence. At this point, it is important to note, this group consisted of 3 boys and 3 girls. And us 3 girls decided that we were going to leave the event early to go get ready for the party that evening. As we were trying to leave, he tried to come with us, even though we kept proclaiming that it was literally just us 3 girls going back to my place to get changed and flashy for the party, which in hindsight was very creepy of him to want to come with us. We all arrived at the party and the drinks are flowing, and he keeps actively making too much of an effort to spend time with me, giving me drinks, interrupting my conversation with people, and just becoming a general hindrance. It got to the point where I was literally trying to hide from him the whole rest of the night. As it approached kick-out time for the party, a whole group of us moved on to a nightclub that was nearby, where he just stood and watched us all dance, literally like a statue. It was beyond creepy, and several people up to this point had pointed out his weird behavior towards me. Around 3 a.m., we all make the move to the train station to head our separate ways. Me and another girl had to go the same way, as she lived a few train stops away from me. As I was about to leave, he approached me and said, "I'd like to take you home. I have nowhere to stay tonight, and as I plan to walk around London taking photos, it'd be no bother to me." Alarm bells started ringing. He traveled all this way, knowing that he had no place to stay. A creepy middle-aged guy who had a surprise visit a group of younger people in another country, and he wants to take me home. Hell no. I politely declined and explained I lived rather far out of London, and it would be too long of a trip for him to take to escort me home, when I already had my friend for my journey. I dart around saying goodbye and make a swift exit before he can notice that I'm gone. It's now 5 a.m. and I am home. My window faces the same direction as the front of the house. I'm getting changed, preparing for bed, and I go to close my curtains. There's a strange figure standing outside my house. It was very dark and I couldn't make it out, but from their stature, I immediately recognized this gentleman's similar stature to the guy that traveled across the country to spend literally every living moment with me. Whether it was him or not, I will never be sure, but I have never ran downstairs quick enough to make sure the front door was locked than I did in that moment. Safe to say, I didn't sleep that night. The next day, there were talks in the mod chat after he mentioned that he went traveling on the underground to visit different areas, but never really confirmed where he went or what he saw, so I guess I'll never know if it was him, but if it was, I never want to see him again. When I was 15, Ray William Johnson was the most subscribed to channel on YouTube. I feel it's necessary to say now that he was not the YouTuber this story is about, but I feel this is important to include for context. Doing some research for this post, he was the first YouTube channel to ever reach 5 million subscribers, so he was very popular at the time. In his show, he reviewed viral videos as a teenager. It was one of my favorite things to watch. Every week, he would pick one subscriber video to provide the comment question of the week to which his subscribers would provide responses in the comment section. A friend and I thought we had a great question to ask, featuring her new baby iguana, and sent it in every week after filming it. By the 4th or 5th week, our video was selected and aired on that week's show. In hindsight, there definitely wasn't much more traffic coming into my account, but at the time, it really felt like it. I had 30 some messages in my message box at the time, and quite a few comments on the original video. I can confidently say, "Let's not meet" to anyone in that comment section, garnering such classy comments as, "I'd tap both of you at the same time. I would do you both, and the iguana can watch. I would totally do the girl on the left." And of course the classic, "I love you." My friend at the time was 13 years old, and my message box did not look much different. Now, as a teenager with low self-esteem, I was pleased with a lot of this new attention. I was actually taking time to respond to a lot of the messages, ignoring the disturbing ones, thanking people for congratulating me on getting picked, and occasionally starting a conversation with some internet strangers. One of the most common questions I got asked after the video was, "How old are you?" And of course I offered up the information because why wouldn't I? One specific person sticks out because he continued talking to me consistently. Every day I would have a message from him and I would respond. He was just chatting, just being nice, I thought. He had a YouTube account, small, but had a couple thousand subscribers. Having had 11 myself, all of which being my friends, I thought it was cool that his channel was successful. He asked me how old I was. I told him 15. He told me he was 21. It was initially quite tame conversation, but after a few weeks, he asked me for my phone number. I was naive and gave it to him because he was nice and he didn't live anywhere near me. From what he told me, he lived several states away. Then he texted me all the time. He tried calling me. Around this time is where I started getting creeped out. He began talking about wanting to meet me. Now, at this point I had seen To Catch a Predator in school, and I started getting somewhat suspicious. I never gave him any more information other than the state I lived in and my first name. That seemed innocent enough, but he started getting flirty and creepy and generally uncomfortable to talk to. I slowly stopped responding, ignoring his phone calls, and would say I was busy. Then he found my other social media accounts and tried talking to me there. I told him I had gotten a boyfriend, which was a lie, but he still sent me generally just comforting messages, especially looking back at it. This guy made me so uncomfortable that even thinking about it now, or seeing his username, makes me feel nauseated and tense. The messages that really got to me, the one that finally scared me enough, and the one that I can actually remember after all these years, said, "I'm gonna come to Ohio to find you, and when I finally do, I'm gonna hug you so hard. I'm gonna squeeze and squeeze until your eyes pop out of your little head." I never told my parents, but I was lucky enough to be able to get my phone number changed. I started getting paranoid that he would find me, checking my locks, closing my curtains. I removed him from some social media, changed my usernames and display names to make myself harder to find because, I was a teenager, to be able to contact my actual friends all the time. Surprisingly, it got quiet for a while, and I slowly gained some feeling of safety back. I actually started a new YouTube channel at the recommendation of some friends and started putting myself out there again, doing more media production, which I love, and garnering a small following of 1,200 strangers, none of whom ever made me feel unsafe, thankfully. A few years down the road, I started my freshman year of college. I had just turned 18, and wouldn't you know, he found me again, found me on all social medias, sent me messages again, posted some comments on my old YouTube channel, all at once. I felt absolutely sick. I remember the creepy messages and unsettling feeling, just generally breathlessness I had when he started telling me he would find me and that he was coming for me. I had a brief panic attack before swiftly blocking him on everything. My profiles were me at my new college, wearing my gear and everything. I would have been significantly easier to find now, and I knew it. I hardly made any friends my first year at college. I didn't leave my room much after that happened. I never went to parties. I scarcely made friends. Every so often I would remember the experience and get sick. This is one of those times. I've since graduated. I moved far away with my boyfriend, but I still check my locks and curtains aggressively every night, sometimes 3 or 4 times, even if I'm sure I've done it already. What I'll never understand is how a grown man at 21 would be so interested in a 15-year-old girl, and especially still be interested after several years. The entire memory disgusts me. He still posts videos on the YouTube channel, and all I can think about is how he tried to get with me when I was a minor, a child. He was a predator. He took away my sense of safety. And up to this point, he certainly is on my top 10 list of people with whom I hope I never ever have to encounter again. Around a year, maybe a year and a half ago, I was using this app called Whisper to help with making new friends after getting out of high school. I was 19 at the time and had a really nice boyfriend. I had used Whisper before and actually made 2 or 3 friends during my senior year, and also found a friend of mine's boyfriend cheating using Whisper. So safe to say that this app can be a handful sometimes. I put out a Whisper asking for someone to talk to, and of course I got tons of replies, but I couldn't reply to all of them. But I messaged some of the interesting ones back. This guy named Jack started messaging me, and he seemed really nice. He said he was 23 and actually lived 8 minutes from my house. If you have used Whisper, you know that you can search by area, or go into a general section to see thousands of whispers being uploaded that you could reply to. You could also send photos instantly after 4 messages for some reason. As soon as he messaged me 4 times, he sent me a selfie, and I was surprised but didn't really respond to it. Jack was telling me that he was working for a towing company in a neighboring town, how he would have to go use the interstate to go places. At the time, I didn't have a job because my mother was sick, so I would use my laptop out in the kitchen, at the table, to watch streams and play some games, in case she needed me at some point. I remember watching my friends stream, talking to my friends, and genuinely having a good time until I got a text from Jack. Now, I never gave him my address, never really explained where I lived. But he texted me, saying, "Hey, look out your window." I thought maybe something happened on the interstate, but then I remembered I never told him how close it was to me. I see a tow truck right outside my house, where the car broke down or something. My blood ran cold. He was at the truck, waving. I started shaking. Due to having bad anxiety, I ended up having an anxiety attack. How do you know where I lived? I replied asking what he meant, and he said, "Well, you're home, aren't you?" I didn't respond, went back to the stream and started typing to my friends, freaking out to them. I didn't want to call the cops because my cousin is one, and so is one of my friends. As soon as anything was heard about it, I thought I'd be in deep shit for it, so I just ignored him. Then, he sent me a dick pic on the app. I was disgusted and deleted the post, and messages from Whisper. I also blocked him. The next day, an unknown number texted me, and I figured out it was him. I ignored it, and then I got a restricted phone call, and I picked up. Big mistake. I was out in the garage with my cat, and I heard the voice on the other end say, "Hey, you look sexy right now. Wanna go for some ice cream down the road?" I looked at the door that was next to me, and I see him in his car, driving slow, keeping his eyes locked on me. I jumped up and ran inside after hanging up, running to my room so I could feel the comfort of my blankets on my bed. I was petrified. I got a job soon after at Subway, and he would come in and start harassing me, texting me from random numbers since I would block all of them. I felt paranoid all the time, knowing that he seemed to know where I was all the time. One day, my now ex-boyfriend ended up texting him furiously, telling him to leave me alone, stop stalking me and everything. I never got a message after that, but I'm still paranoid he's watching me. So Jack, let's not meet. A few months ago, my sister started talking to this boy online named Ben. The two of them had a lot in common, and were only about a year apart in terms of age. We didn't think anything of it at first, because it's normal to have online friends these days. My sister is really introverted, so it was nice to hear that she had someone to chat to. From what I understand, Ben was also there for her emotionally too, if that makes sense. My sister became quite attached to him. Ben also introduced her to a few of his friends as well. They all seemed like your typical edgy teenagers, the kind that post selfies with emo song lyrics and stuff like that. Ben seemed like a normal caring friend, and even messaged me a couple times when he was concerned about my sister being upset. He seemed genuine, and I was happy that my sister found someone like this. One day, my sister asked my mom if she could meet up with Ben in the city. He lived in another state and had organized to spend a week in our state with his aunt, so it seemed like the perfect opportunity for them to meet up. They arranged a date and time to meet in the city, and my mom had accompanied her. When that day came though, he didn't even show up. He made some excuse up that his aunt wouldn't drive him there, and we figured she was probably concerned about Ben meeting someone he had only known over the internet. I admit, I did have a really bad feeling about their meetup while we waited for Ben to show up, but I stupidly ignored it. My sister, understandably, was quite upset that he hadn't showed up. Ben messaged me to apologize to us for having to run around after him. He explained that his aunt could be unreasonable sometimes. At the moment, I genuinely believed he was a decent person and wasn't lying about his situation. After a couple of months passed, with just the two of them chatting away like normal, at some point, my mom gets the idea that she and my sister could fly to his state and meet him. Ben liked the idea, and so they ordered their flight tickets. One day out of the blue, my sister burst into my room, clearly frightened. She told me to block Ben and the two friends he introduced me to earlier. When I asked why, she explained to me that Ben had been a cover-up identity for a person that had previously threatened her using another account. All of the pictures he posted were from someone else's account. She found this out and confronted him. His two friends that we had chatted with on posts and everything were all fake accounts run by him to keep up the illusion. The person, after being confronted by my sister, admitted that they were keeping tabs on my sister. They had been chatting for months, and she had likely told him personal things too. The flight tickets were immediately canceled after my mom found out, and we were all spooked about the whole thing. I still am. I am even a little paranoid to share this. We couldn't tell the police because my sister was a dingus and didn't keep a copy of the messages the account sent her. The account was taken down after we informed the guy whose pictures were stolen about the incident. So whoever this person is, let's never cross paths again. So backstory. This happened a few days ago when I was on holiday with my friend in Seoul. To put this in context, we are two 20-year-olds who look more like we're 16 or something. Anyway, we were at a train station waiting for the train when I accidentally brushed my elbow against this old man's back. He got up and started swearing really loudly at us. I obviously apologized. At this time, the train came and we got on. The old man was also getting on, through another door. On the train, he walked past us and started swearing at us again and sat somewhere else. When we got to the train station that we were supposed to get off at, I turned around to face the door and realized he was also going to get off, and he was staring at us from the other door. But it happened so fast, so we just had to get off. And at the door at the platform, he asked me where I was from. I was shocked and scared, so my friend just dragged me away. We hid behind a convenience store at the platform for about 5 minutes and then decided to exit. As we got closer, we realized that he was standing by the exit and looking for us, waiting for us. We immediately ran in the other direction to the other exit where we got on a bus. We kept looking behind us and hoping he didn't follow us. After this whole situation, we were shocked and paranoid that we went back to our place and changed out of our clothes we were wearing in fear that he would spot us again. Thankfully, nothing happened after that, and we got back home safe. But I wouldn't want to think about what would have happened if we didn't see him at the exit and continue walking his way. So old man at the train station, let's never meet again.